And last year, my wife said, yeah, we really want to go back home for Christmas. So we leave 80-degree weather in Cabo. So we arrived in Washington suburb of it's been 3 days, so kind of slow. We'll give it a short. That's amazing.
Very good.
I think they have yes.
I'd like to call the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board meeting to order. First, I'd like you all to stand and ask Vice Chairman Umberg to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, before we officially begin our meeting, I'd like to introduce to you and welcome to the Authority Board 2 members since our last monthly board meeting, both Senate appointees, Mr. Bob Balganorth and Mr. Jim Hartnett. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Mr. Balganorth participated at a special meeting, so some of you may have seen him, but those regular monthly Authority Board visitors may not have, so we welcome you, gentlemen, to the Authority Board. Thank you very much for your commitment of time and energy. First item on our agenda is that of public comment. People are requested to submit a public comment card. You will have 2 minutes to present your public comment, and for those who have designated a separate item to speak on, you'll be called up during that specific item. So if I may first call on Mr. Bob Snoddy and then Norman Allender. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Pringle and members of the Authority. I'm pleased to announce that Kern County stakeholders participating in the Kern Fast Track process have come to a local consensus on the alignment through the cities of Wasco and Shafter. This consensus includes the cities, the county and Kern, and the Wasco-Shafter Agricultural Group. We believe this 40-mile segment will be one of the first to be shovel-ready. This segment contains the 2 most centrally located heavy maintenance facility sites on the system. In addition, the City of Bakersfield and Kerncog have an MOU to coordinate stationary planning in the second largest and fastest growing metropolis in Central California. We commend the Authority staff and their prompt response to improving communication between the local stakeholders. Kern's stakeholders eagerly await a follow-up meeting with your staff prior to the release of the Fresno to Bakersfield environmental document. We are seeing building momentum for high-speed rail in our region. On May 16th, the Kern Transportation Foundation is hosting a luncheon to welcome high-speed rail to Kern County and would like to invite the board members to attend. And we have circulated an envelope to each and every one of you with the invitation in that regards and some sample information. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Norman Allender, and then Supervisor Perea. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman, members of the Commission. Norman Allender, Madera County Planning Director. Just wanted to give a couple of points about our county's position on the east-west route on Highway 152. Preliminary indications are that may be located, that route, some 400 feet south of 152 and then cut diagonally through farmland. We would think that not to be in any way beneficial to our agricultural community or our family farmers. And we would also like to remind the entire state that State Route 152 has a significant problem in the fog with crashes and deaths, and we think that this is the better solution for the community and for the state at large. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Perea, and then Ms. Howard. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, first, Fresno Works wants to say thank you to all of you. You're doing a phenomenal job. We know, a lot of us sit in the chairs that you sit in, and we know how difficult it can be sometimes when people want to or have a different opinion on what you're doing. But you're staying the course, and we're showing the fruits of your labor in our communities. And, of course, Mr. Van Ark, you've done a phenomenal job coming into the Valley, meeting with our agricultural community and other folks who have an interest. And we're starting to see a change. There's some folks who may not completely agree with where the track may be going, but certainly they understand that they're being heard now. So that's a good thing, so thank you. Just to tell you a little bit what we're doing in Fresno, Fresno Works has been very active with all our subcommittees. Probably the most active right now has been our Education Committee. We've had a lot of international interest in Fresno. The Japanese were here just 2 weeks ago again visiting with us, and the Chinese continue to visit our community. And I'm happy to tell you that our Fresno Works Subcommittee is working on a high-speed rail educational exchange program, and we have a draft MOU that is about to be signed between Beijing Zhejiang University and Cal State University Fresno. They met with our President Welty and had a very good discussion, and they'll be signing a similar agreement with our State Center Community College District. So we really are focused on the education component of preparing our workforce for the high-speed rail. And the last thing I'll say is simply that Mayor Pedroza and I from Merced, we're going to be organizing and already have in play a lot of the elected officials in the valley, where we're going to start organizing folks, getting them all behind high-speed rail, which many of them already are, and coming with even a stronger voice for the valley to make this happen. So our message to our community is there's $5.5 billion in the bank. High-speed rail is not a theoretical discussion. It's going to happen, and it's going to start in Fresno to Bakersfield, so it's a matter of where the alignments are and us all working together, and I think people get that now. So thank you again for your leadership. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. Ms. Kate Howard, and then Mr. Lee Saad.
Good morning, Chair Pringle, members of the committee. Kate Howard, on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco, representing Mayor Ed Lee. You have before you a letter from the mayor that I'd like to convey to you on his behalf. Dear Chairman Pringle, members of the committee, I applaud the California High-Speed Rail Authority on your steady progress toward making high-speed rail a reality in California. High-speed rail will go a long way to address California's challenging transportation and environmental issues. I'm pleased to reiterate San Francisco's strong support for high-speed rail in California and for the inclusion of the Trans-Bay Transit Center in the initial operating project for the San Francisco to San Jose segment of high-speed rail. As you know, San Francisco has long been a champion of high-speed rail and has already dedicated hundreds of millions of dollars in local revenue towards construction of the northern terminus of high-speed rail service at the new Trans-Bay Transit Center. Consistent with Proposition 1A, which requires that the San Francisco Station for High-Speed Rail be located at the Transit Center, the Obama administration also dedicated $400 million in funding for this station in California's 2010 ARA award. I encourage the High-Speed Rail Authority to leverage San Francisco's commitment to high-speed rail for the entire project's benefit. We especially look forward to the arrival of high-speed rail at the new Trans-Bay Transit Center in downtown San Francisco, which is now under construction. More than 45 million passengers will pass through the transit center on an annual basis, making it the busiest transit center in California. With this level of activity, the transit center will serve as an anchor for transit-oriented development and help the state reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, construction of the San Francisco downtown extension will generate almost 78,000 jobs, $360 million in travel time savings to transit riders, and nearly $8 million associated with reduced emissions over 13 years. For more than a decade, San Francisco, in collaboration with the TJPA and with the support of MTC and Caltrans, has been preparing to bring high-speed rail to the heart of downtown San Francisco. Constructing the high-speed rail segment from San Francisco's Trans-Bay Transit Center to San Jose will require the continued collaboration of all our stakeholders, including your body. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Howard. I should report I had a very nice conversation earlier this week with Mayor Lee, who expressed, outside of written word, those exact same sentiments and the commitment of San Francisco to make sure multiple trains in conformity with Prop 1A arrive at the Trans-Bay Terminal daily when the system is fully built out. So thank you very much, Ms. Howard. Yes, sir.
Chair Pringle, members of the board, good morning. My name is Lee Saga. I'm the Deputy Director for Capital Projects with the San Francisco Transportation Authority. I'm pleased to be here today to again reiterate San Francisco's strong support for the high-speed rail in California, and with regard to item 5 on your agenda, to urge your consideration of an option for phased implementation that we believe better serves and promotes success of high-speed intercity rail service within the state. Authority staff will present a concept for phased implementation between San Francisco and San Jose. San Francisco has long promoted the idea of phased implementation. We applaud the staff's efforts in this regard. The initial operating phase described by staff includes the electrification of Caltrain along with other limited trackage and station improvements to coincide with initiation of service from the Central Valley to San Jose. Service would not extend, however, to Transbay Transit Center, identified within Prop 1A as the San Francisco terminus of high-speed rail. San Francisco strongly believes that this is the wrong approach to phasing. A better phasing option is to provide the minimum infrastructure necessary for service between the Transbay Transit Center, now under construction in San Francisco, and the proposed Diridon station in San Jose. By merging the planned electrification of Caltrain and downtown extension to Transbay into a single project, near high-speed passenger rail service can quickly be established between two large urban centers. Full-scale high-speed rail service provides speeds on the San Francisco Peninsula of up to 125 miles per hour, while the electrified Caltrain reaches nearly 100 miles per hour, a comparable near high-speed operation that can reduce travel time by more than 25%. Today, the Transbay Center is the first and only element of high-speed rail under construction in America. Now fully funded, the $1.6 billion Transbay Center will be completed in 2017 and already includes more than $1 billion in local funding. Environmental reviews have been completed for DTX and for Caltrain, allowing rapid implementation of service to Transbay. Success of the initial operating phase is critical to success of high-speed rail in California and depends on ridership. A connection between two major city centers will provide the anticipated ridership that will far exceed anything available within the San Joaquin Valley.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And the final public comment under this section is Mr. Schonbrun.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Schonbrun, president of Transdev, which is one of the plaintiffs in the town of Atherton lawsuits, which successfully challenged the Bay Area EIR and are currently challenging the revised EIR. I wanted to come forward and welcome the new board members. We want to get our relationship off to a good start. We're big supporters of high-speed rail, but had major disagreements with the previous board on how to accomplish that. We filed opening briefs recently and think that they're very strong. We understand that you, as new board members, did not create the mess that the previous board members left behind, and so there's no blame on you. On the other hand, you will be judged by how you fix the situation that currently exists. We think you shouldn't feel wedded to the decisions of the past. No tracks have been laid. Nothing has been done that can't be undone. On today's agenda, you will be authorizing the study of an alternative that had been previously rejected. That's all that Transdev is asking for at least from our standpoint. We want you to put an ultimate option into the project-level EIR. Our plaintiffs' coalition had put a settlement offer on the table that was rejected by the previous board. If you indicate any interest in settlement discussions, we'd be happy to bring together the co-plaintiffs and authorize an offer. I would also appreciate the opportunity to meet with you individually. Thank you very much, and I hope that your term on this board will generate major change for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do have an additional card from Mr. Dan York. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Pringle and other members of the board. I spoke briefly yesterday in front of this the committee for discussion on this new alignment, which would carry the high-speed rail along the Grapevine. I only found out about this reintroduction of this alignment consideration Friday of last week, which had been rejected before. The Wildlands Conservancy, of which I am the associate director, has about 6 to 9 miles to the west of the 5. This is a property that has been acquired with private donations for the enjoyment of the public. We do about 120,000 children. Actually, we do about 12,000 children a year in free outdoor education on this property. And the Chairman may be familiar with some of our other properties further south in California. We have 12 preserves. This area has extraordinary habitat, and in conjunction with the recent Wildlife Conservation Board's easements across the Tejon, our neighbor to the east, which has 16 miles along this corridor, 5 national as well as many state, regional, and local environmental groups have recognized the extraordinary opportunity for a wildlife corridor in this area. So the idea of the kind of disturbance on a massive level to put the rail through this area would be highly destructive to the habitat. The second issue is, I don't know if people have really looked at this carefully. I live on this property, and the seismic activity is constant. This particular alignment would call for a lateral crossing of the San Andreas Fault. Given the recent disasters at the Japanese nuclear plants, based on engineering assurances that things were safe, my confidence is at an all-time low in terms of safety for the passengers traveling through this highly seismic area. So we oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It brings us to the second item on our agenda, and that's approval of meeting minutes. Are there any members of the board who wish to make comments on the minutes that are before them? Or is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Toledo, second by Mr. Umberg. Any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Third item is a report on committee reports, and the first committee being the Executive Administrative Committee, of which I chair. I'll review the actions of the committee of yesterday. Item 2 on our committee agenda was approval of the minutes. There was a vote to approve the minutes without modification. Next, dealing with legislative update, there was a legislative report on the current status of legislation, and in that report, the committee took action on 3 bills. AB 952, Mr. Jones, the committee changed its position to, no, we didn't change our position. We're going to continue to monitor that position that we have, which is a monitor position. On AB 292 of Ms. Galgiani's, the committee made a motion to support it. And on AB 1077, the committee took a position to oppose that unless amended. Actually, we only took action on 2 bills. Is that correct, Mr. Barker? Further, the committee approved the recommendation and the language of establishing a formal arrangement with the high-speed rail authority and the low sand corridor in such that the executive director or his or her designee will serve in an ex officio capacity on the low sand corridor board. Item 5 on our agenda was a memorandum of understanding with the United Kingdom. The committee supported that. And finally, on the issue of small business, disabled veteran business enterprise policy, the committee supported the direction of staff for the continued development of that policy, of which the final policy will be brought back before the board for a vote in coming months. Is that properly portrayed, Mr. Toledo? Very good. Wow, great. And with that, I do see one member of the public wishes to be heard on the actions of the Executive Committee, Mr. Rich Dryden. Yes, sir.
And I am standing. Chairman and distinguished members, thank you very much. I don't think I stand alone when I state that the Small Business DVB program should be executed without question, specifically under the auspices of the authority, and that your contract manager should find direction on SB and DVB planning directly from you, the owner of the contract. Over the past 6 years since I have been ED of the California Disabled Veteran Business Alliance and longstanding member of the California State Small Business Committee. The state has made small business and DVB participation and goal attainment an art. Each year, state agency recognition awards are presented to agencies and individuals that excel in achievement and best practices to exceed 25 and 3%. We have measurement tools in place and oversight already working to support an extremely successful program. I must say, and this is a personal note, professionally, I was dismayed at the loss of an amazingly competent Rachel Weniger as your small business DVBE advocate. I had met with her and established a very strong dialogue, and it was clear to me that she understood what needed to be done and was acting in the best interest of the authority. In any case, an advocate must be designated and must be in the authority and must report directly to you, the board. As such, the authority should bring all actions involving small business and DVB programs under its umbrella and should include discussion of DBE participation as appropriate. You may then subcontract to support that action directly from the authority, and that would ease some of the problems that we've been discussing more recently. Finally, and I request a specific answer to this, is the authority actively pursuing federal legislation to bring a DBE program into the Federal Rail Code as it is now implemented in the DOT DBE program through Federal Highway Authority? If so, that action is illegal to consciously circumvent California law vis-a-vis Prop 209.
Thank you, sir. To answer your question, this board has taken no position on advancing or seeking additional federal law in this regard. So this board has not taken any action on that. However, I'd like the board to take action on the 4 items of which the Executive Committee took action on yesterday. On items 2, 3, 4, and 5, approval of minutes, the legislative update, the Lausanne Corridor Joint Powers Agreement, and the United Kingdom Memorandum of Understanding. Those were the 4 action items of the committee. Is it Mr. Toledo? Would you move?
So moved.
And Mr. Richard seconds. At this point in time, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the Executive Administrative Committee action? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those items are adopted. Next item on our agenda is item number 4, Operations Committee Report. Mr. Umberg chaired that committee. Please, Mr. Umberg, make a presentation on what took place at the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, the Operations Committee met with full component Commissioner Hartnett as well as Commissioner Burns and myself. The only item of substantive consideration was the proposal to study as a concept the potential alternative of the Grapevine vice the Palmdale alternative. Let me underline concept, study, potential. It's not a recommendation with respect to any decision at this point in time. The rationale for considering a Grapevine alternative is the potential lower cost with respect to the entire system and the potential time savings. It's about a 25-mile reduction in distance and a 7 to 9 minute reduction in time between Los Angeles and San Francisco. The concerns with respect to the Palmdale alternative that would generate an interest in studying as a concept the Grapevine alternative were seismic concerns and also issues with respect to both support and opposition in the areas in which the Palmdale alternative would traverse. The cost of the study would be approximately $700,000, and it will not stop the analysis of the Palmdale alternative or other alternatives. This study would take approximately 4 to 6 months. The committee recommended to the board that they approve the study, this conceptual study. Mr. Hartnett or Mr. Burns, anything you wish to add? All right. So we recommend approval.
Very good. There are a few members of the public who wish to be heard on this item. I'd like to call forward then Ms. Eileen Reynolds and then Mr. Norm Hickling.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Eileen Reynolds. I'm the Vice President for Government Affairs for Tejon Ranch Company. We own basically most of the land on the Grapevine. We are a publicly traded company. And we're a publicly traded company that owns 270,000 acres along the Grapevine, 16 miles of footage along I-5. Basically, a lot has happened during the time that the authority decided not to pursue the Grapevine. It's been about 8 years. We are already fully intending the high-speed rail to go through our property at the northernmost part. But along I-5 is where we've got some development projects already approved. We entered a historic conservation and land use agreement with national environmental groups in 2008, which is going to preserve 90% of the ranch for the environment, while the economic engine for that preserve and that conservation are the development projects, which we believe the high-speed rail going through those projects could, definitely cost you more as far as, eminent domain and the need to go through that area. We were surprised at the cost of a conceptual study, which we understand is going to be a stakeholder type thing that ultimately gets you to the possibility of studying this as an alternative. But we think we've got a lot of environmental issues, a lot of opposition to this route. And if you decide to go forward with this and spend that kind of money on a conceptual study, we certainly intend to cooperate with you and be a stakeholder. But we also just want to put up the red flag that it's going to be a really big, hard-fought deal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hickling and then Ms. Leiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the authority. I'm here on behalf of Los Angeles County Supervisor Mike Antonovich, and I believe you all have a copy of the letter that he has written to the authority here, and I would like to just, if I may, read a couple excerpts out of the letter. A decision to revisit the I-5 corridor alignment is a step backwards. In 2005, the California High-Speed Rail made the decision to eliminate the I-5 corridor alignment and instead directed its staff and hired consultants to further the design and develop or environmental work to connect high-speed rail between Los Angeles and the Central Valley through Palmdale. The proposed action before this board today would jeopardize years' worth of commitments to high-speed rail connection for the Antelope Valley residents. In addition, the North County region, including its 2 cities and unincorporated areas, have invested a significant amount of monies and time in planning for this important connection that provides benefits for all of Southern California. The Valley's residents are among the state's most resolute supporters of high-speed rail and voted in 2009 to support the project in the statewide bond funding. As one of the state's fastest-growing regions, the Antelope Valley has a population of 450,000 people, a diverse economy, and a potential for exponential growth with high-speed rail. High-speed rail landing in Palmdale at the Palmdale Transportation Station would generate nearly 13,000 daily trips, which you would give those up should you go with a different alignment. The Antelope Valley is poised in the coming years to become a multimodal transportation center with the convergence of the High Desert Corridor Expressway, E220, Metrolink passenger rail line, the future alignment of Desert Express high-speed rail from Palmdale to Las Vegas, and connection with Palmdale Regional Airport. And in addition to a plan that Supervisor Antonovich has been working on for some time, an inland port for cargo movement and transportation. The supervisor has spent and worked diligently with the High-Speed Rail Authority staff and the North County communities to come up with good solutions. And he really asked you to reject this proposal and continue to work with those communities to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Leiss and then Mr. Tolmick.
Good morning, Chairman Pringle and the members of the Commission. My name is Lori Lyle.
Lyle, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Palmdale. Before you have some letters from our Mayor, Jim Sledford, Senator Sharon Renner, the Greater Antelope Valley Economic Alliance, Palmdale Chamber of Commerce, Antelope Valley Black Chamber, and we could have provided more had we had more time with respect to this issue, in opposition to reevaluating the Grapevine alignment. This alignment's already been analyzed and rejected. We spent considerable time and energy identifying the benefits of the Palmdale alignment, and we believe that the parameters of your study are flawed. Yesterday it was 3 months. Today we're hearing 4 to 6 months. We believe that the delays will be even longer than that. We believe that the cost of $700,000 will result in an unnecessary expenditure, and that the outcome will be opposition and contentiousness that is greater now, that will be greater than what we're experiencing now with the communities elsewhere on the route. Also, there's a potentially significant economic impact to our city, even with the suggestion of moving the alignment. We're trying to attract businesses and jobs. They're relying on a multimodal transportation system in the future, and this could affect that. So in conclusion, I'd like to request that you reject this proposal and use the state's money wisely and responsibly to resolve the concerns surrounding the alignments between Sylmar and Palmdale, keep the project on track, and provide a transportation system that supports the residents of the entire state. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Umberg?
If I said this, I want to make sure that the record is clear that this conceptual study would not delay the analysis or any potential implementation of the Palmdale route. And let me make sure that that's correct. I'll ask Mr. Van Ark to verify that.
I think your time's up.
That is correct. We will continue to work on the other two routes that are still in play. They are not withdrawn, so we retain the other two routes which go through the Antelope Valley through Palmdale. Obviously, if the Grapevine should become a chosen alignment, and we would have to come back to the board in 4 to 6 months from now, we would have to tell the board what, if any, and we do believe there may be a delay in that particular alignment, but it would at this stage not have any effect on the other two alignments.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Rich Talamak, California Route Foundation. I want to thank the board for considering this valid alternative, which should not have been rejected a number of years ago, and point out that your existing data is so flawed that it has twisted the decision-making process. And I want to point out that your current website states that the mileage between Los Angeles and San Francisco via Palmdale and Mojave is 432 miles. And that has always been a fraudulent number. And you need to revisit this because you can't trust the work that's been done to this point. It's going to be a savings of someplace between 40 and 50 miles to go via a more rational direct route. The business community, the financial community that you expect to pay for a portion of the line becomes a lot more affordable and cost-effective if it doesn't have a permanent 40 to 50 mile kink in it. And that's what makes a direct route essential to study if you really expect to attract private money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That concludes public comment on this item. I didn't participate in the committee meeting of yesterday, and I do have just a couple questions myself. I know that no member of this present board was on the board when the decision was made for that initial route prior to 2005. And therefore, we engaged in a programmatic EIR at that time, and within that, there was basically a route that was presented. I don't know if any of those early decisions have been revisited in terms of a route now. That was kind of the overall general map of where service would be provided, and then the precise discussion of those alternatives and crafting that route and that environmental process is what we're doing now in this project level EIR. I guess I am a bit skeptical about reopening any of that discussion, but at the same time, it's interesting to at least hear, because none of us have heard before, if in fact this route does generate a tremendous amount of savings in time and in costs. So it'd be hard not to find value in at least some study. I worry about, though, that study taking 4 to 6 months or whatever range of months that is. So could I get a better understanding of the timeline in which this additional study will take place, because what I am being told is it would be a study to determine if this would be added into the alternative analysis. So this is not the alternative analysis on this section. It's studying to see if it should be added as an alternative to be reviewed. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. The main reason is that we need to have an opportunity to discuss the effects of this new route with these stakeholders. We had to bring this public before we could actually go and discuss this with the stakeholders. So we need that period of time now to discuss it with them. And we do believe, we said yesterday, more in the direction of 4 months, but it's not a thing that's going to happen too quickly. I also would just like to mention, because you didn't ask the question directly, one of the main things that changed on the LA to Palmdale route is that it became a lot more complex than what was originally envisaged. So the complexities due to developments that occurred in the years that went by, but also because of what was found, the amount of tunneling that was required, the effects of the tunneling and the faults that you've got on that alignment, trying to get those faults in the right positions, because that's a big engineering challenge. So those things changed over time. And therefore we believe, looking back at the grapevine and being able to speak to the stakeholders now for that period of about 4 months, that we could get a clearer picture of whether the grapevine is possibly still a good alternative to bring back.
Well, I guess my only question there is that probably the one thing that hasn't changed is where the faults are. That, in fact, maybe we gained greater knowledge, and therefore with that knowledge and then being very precise as to where we will put a tunnel, where we need to put a tunnel, or where we can be at grade, all of those issues are how we address what has always been there. And, the one thing I am concerned about is what really has changed is a lot of development and approved land for development, particularly along the 5, but certainly in some ways through the Palmdale alignment. So in this study, I don't know if we do this. It was a point of concern I had prior when we evaluate alternatives. But, to reopen this issue, I will be very focused on if we have actually valued or measured the cost of this new alternative completely, because I don't think we can look at vacant property and say all vacant residential property has the same value necessarily. If there's entitlements on that property, we need to value it at that level. So if we're just contemplating the physical construction component to see where we're going to get savings, and if that is the measure by which we may find $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion in savings, yet we don't value the underlying property at what its general value is in that determination, then we're missing really the cost or the true impact of those savings, if there are any. So I would really like to make sure when we look at this, and this may be something different here than anything else, but this in fact is something different. We're going back and reevaluating something that's already been approved under programmatic EIR. I'd like to know really if we are going to change to the Tejon 5 route, that property, those approvals, the value of that property needs to be taken more clearly into account than just say it's vacant property and it's going to be the same price as other vacant property along that the Palmdale route. So, I really would like to see if we are going to come back and demonstrate a savings for the I-5, if in fact there's engineering savings there, we better make sure there's a full evaluation of that engineering savings is also an actual savings when you go about purchasing land that's already been approved for development. So those are some of my concerns here. I don't believe those people that are concerned about this route being changed, I don't think this motion or action is changing anything. It's just making sure there's the ability to fully evaluate this alternative. That's what's shared with me, and that's the really the only reason I'm comfortable now in proceeding with this evaluation, because we should at least understand what that is, but understand all the parameters in that discussion. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Hartnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we discussed this at the committee meeting yesterday and inquired of the staff during the presentation, we were told that the conceptual study includes additional engineering work in addition to outreach to stakeholders, and that the goal is to determine whether or not, from a conceptual perspective, this alternative is a feasible alternative. And only if it is judged to be a feasible alternative and is recommended to us as such would we then be faced with the decision of including this as an alignment to be studied. I'm in accord with your comments as to what should be within the scope of making a conceptual determination as to feasibility. I also am somewhat concerned that there is too much emphasis on the stakeholder outreach. I think that's really important, but I think and that helps inform the feasibility. And we were told that the comments and the discussion from the stakeholders is going to be an important element in the determination of feasibility. But on the engineering side and the actual cost side, the reasons for this being an alternative worth studying beyond the community input, I think those things are very important to making that determination, because if we select this as an alternative to study, there's a tremendous consequence to that, both in terms of time delay and additional cost of the study. And so I just want to make sure that when the recommendation, if any, comes back, if this is approved as to the conceptual feasibility, that we have a really good engineering and practical grounding in this for us to make a good decision.
Mr. Richards?
You, Jim, just basically went through what I was going to say, probably not as eloquently, though.
I totally agree with your comments. The only thing I'm concerned about is at what point in time do you stop saying we're going to reintroduce new potentially feasible alternatives for discussion? What will the board then contemplate anywhere in the state where someone says, no, loop around here or go down this route and totally redirect decisions that have been made in the past? It's, I think, a fragile place. So I can see how a glimpse at this moment in time on that feasibility may be very, very appropriate, but I also think it opens the door, and I'm concerned about that. But following the direction of the Operations Committee, Mr. Umberg moves. Mr. Burns seconds. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. And welcome, Ms. Shank. Ms. Shank was not tardy for any reason other than high-speed rail reasons. She was doing business for us at another venue. Thank you for being here. Next item before us is item number 5. An update on San Francisco-San Jose alternative section.
Chairman Pringle, members of the board.
Yes, sir. Mr. Levitt, yes.
Thank you. At your February meeting 2011, CEO Van Ark announced that we would be pursuing a phased implementation approach for the San Francisco to San Jose and for the LA to Anaheim sections. This agenda item provides an update of the work that has been done since then in coordination with Caltrain, with the communities along the peninsula, and with other interested stakeholders in order to develop a phased approach for the San Francisco-San Jose section and how best to incorporate that into the formal project-level environmental process. This item, while it's listed as an action item, there's no formal action that we are asking for today. I would like to introduce Tim Cobb, the project manager for the San Francisco-San Jose section, to actually give you a presentation on this.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Morning, Chairman Pringle, board members. Excited to give you this update on the San Francisco to San Jose section.
Not as excited as we are to hear it.
That's good to know. I thought for benefit of the two new board members, I just very briefly would give you a snapshot of kind of where we've been. The environmental process, very prescriptive process, started out with scoping. The next formal process is the draft environmental document, and then the final environmental document. But in between scoping and the draft, really a very important process called the alternatives analysis, starting out taking the concepts that we heard in scoping, distilling those ideas down into alternatives, viable options, doing engineering work on those, meeting with the stakeholders to refine those. We came out with a preliminary alternatives analysis report. Again, doing more refinements with more collaboration with the stakeholders and more engineering. We came up with a supplemental alternative analysis report, and then that's the work that's being fed into the draft environmental document. Again, looking back to where we've been, we finalized the scoping work back in March of 2009. We released our preliminary alternatives analysis report in April of 2010, and our supplemental alternatives analysis in August of 2010. This next slide here is a lot of information. What I really wanted to show was show you all the options that are still in play that we are studying. Design option A here, which is predominantly an at-grade and aerial solution, and design option B, which is really a mix of aerial at-grade and some below-grade trench options. Well, here, option B1, which really focuses a bit more on more open trench with still a little bit of aerial and at-grade in some of the areas where there really aren't other alternatives. So this is the work that we've done in the past. I'll talk a bit more about some of the new work that's going into the analysis. A little background on phased implementation. You know, with the selection of the Central Valley of where construction is going to start there and build out to the south and to the north from there, really afforded us an opportunity to step back and look at what is the best way to implement service on this corridor. Do we really need the full build-out from day one, or is there a phased service implementation that really could work better? So that's what, over the next several months, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at. Important to note, this phased implementation approach, number one, it's not new, and it certainly is aligned with the stakeholder interests. The bullets that I have up here are really taken from all the way back into either scoping or during the AA process of things we've heard from the stakeholders. They wanted us to evaluate a phased service implementation. They wanted us to look at an integrated high-speed train and Caltrain service, do a coordinated ridership and capacity study of the two systems, and certainly as we're developing this, make sure we consider the community-specific plans and the development plans along the corridor. A couple of the key projects, very important projects that we're continuing to work with the stakeholders are up here. The Transbay Transit Center, we know that's a critical link to get to the heart of San Francisco. We're committed to continue to work with the TJPA and the City of San Francisco to identify the funding needed to be sure we can build that link. There's a lot of interest in some of the below-grade options and partially covered trenches that I'll talk about in a bit. And we're, again, committed to work with the communities to see how maybe we could find alternative means of funding for some of those solutions. And working with the cities who have grade separation projects. There's a lot of interest from cities out there to do early grade separation projects to see how we can incorporate that into our phased approach. So what is phased implementation? It really is the incremental implementation of high-speed train service on the corridor. Or said in a different way, it's a multiple phase approach. It's going to start with an initial operating phase, yet to be defined exactly what that is, but it needs to expand out to the full build system that's envisioned in Prop 1A. So our immediate goal is really to develop this initial operating phase in concert with Caltrain It's a project that would share the existing corridor with some sort of blended service between high-speed trains and Caltrains, and provide for an initial high-speed train service up to San Francisco. So a passenger getting on somewhere south in the Central Valley or wherever could get a one-seat ride up to San Francisco. Some of the things we need to consider as we're developing the IOP, we're assuming there's going to be limited funding. Therefore, it will be a minimal infrastructure that's needed to support an initial level of service. Whatever we start out with certainly has to be expandable out to the full build system. We are, as I said, assuming a shared use corridor with Caltrain. It needs to be able to support the planned level of services that Caltrain has. Caltrain is currently undertaking a study to determine the corridor capacity, working closely with the High-Speed Rail Authority on that. That's critical to understand what the capacity of the line is, to understand what additional high-speed trains are we going to be able to possibly put on the system. You need to also consider the freight requirements. And the one thing that the IOP probably won't do is won't lead to the grade separations that we'll get in our full build-out system. As we develop this, always need to keep in mind the legal requirements. We need to comply with Prop 1A. Need to also comply with CEQA and NEPA. This slide shows the general layout of the existing Caltrain corridor, predominantly two-track system with a couple of four-track passing areas. Okay. So next here, we've laid out what the minimum requirements might be for an initial operating project. In our schedule, we've slotted over the next several months to be working with Caltrain and the stakeholders to really define what the initial operating phase is. But what we do know at a minimum, it needs to be an electrified system. We need to have a connection, working from right to left here, we need to have a connection from the Dearborn high-speed train station down into the Caltrain infrastructure. We'll have to have a signal system that's compatible between high-speed trains, Caltrain, and freight. We likely will have to do some grade crossing safety improvements with running the additional service through the at-grade crossings. We'll need to make some modifications at Millbrae to accommodate the high-speed train stop for that important airport connection there. We're likely going to need a maintenance and storage facility somewhere. Currently, we're looking at two different sites, one at Bayshore and one at SFO. And we need to do improvements at 4th and King in order to accommodate the high-speed train service. So I want to reiterate again, what we don't know yet is this infrastructure that are showing up there sufficient? Is there a sufficient capacity there to add our additional trains on? And that's what the capacity study that's going on now and will be finished shortly will tell us. And, on the far left end, I know there are a lot of people in the room here that would like to see Transbay Transit Center also listed on there. And we certainly recognize that's a very important connection to get down to the heart of the city. But with limited funding, we just don't know, will there be enough money in this initial phase? What we think is most important is to get a service running from San Francisco down to San Jose. And if there is, that may change. And as I said, this whole process will be going on over the next several months. As we move forward, building out the four-track system, these yellow blocks really indicate kind of big block projects of how you might build the system out, not suggesting that we build it from south to north or from north to south. Really, that will depend on a couple of key factors. One is capacity, working closely with Caltrain to meet their current and future needs, as well as high-speed trains' current and future needs. We need to look at when do we need to have additional capacity. That may drive where we need to put some of these four-track sections. We also want to work with the stakeholders to see if some of the cities we know have a desire to go early. They want to get the grade separations done. So all things being equal, we'd like to try to put those phases in the earlier part of the program. Now I want to just run through a few slides to show you how we might actually build build this system. It's very complicated whenever you have to build a system within an operating railroad envelope. First one I'll go over is a trench scenario with early electrification. Here's Caltrain today. Our first step then would be to electrify the 2 Caltrain tracks that you have there. That would allow you to have both Caltrain and high-speed trains running. Then we need to build a shoe-fly track. In general, you'll find the existing tracks are in the center of the right-of-way. We need to temporarily move the 2 tracks way over to the side to allow us to build our permanent infrastructure. So once we get the shoe-fly, move our trains over there, take that out, then we're able to build the first half of our open trench. Then we take out the shoe-fly track, we build our second half of the trench, and then we have our final 4-track configuration. Here's a sample of a rendering of an open trench that actually has a cover that promotes more connectivity across the line. Different example, I won't run through the steps because it's virtually identical, but with an aerial structure you'd follow the same steps. Again, here's a rendering of a typical aerial. You get the same connectivity benefits from one side of the right-of-way to the other. And then we'll lastly look at one other way to approach this, which is a more traditional sequencing, I'll call it, where you really wait to do electrification at the end. One of the advantages is one less step. Number one, you don't need to electrify the existing tracks. But more importantly than that is you're not moving all of the electrification equipment through each of these steps. Disadvantage, you don't get the electrified trains until towards the end of the system. And there's some variance on that where you could actually start that just a bit earlier. Next here, I'll show you, this is a real project, San Bruno grade separation that Caltrain is actually undertaking now of how you'd actually do that, where we built our shoe-fly tracks, get the trains over there. Now you can see the aerial structure being built. Once that half of the aerial structure is completed, the trains move over there. We take out the shoe-fly track. Then we're able to go ahead and build the second half of the aerial structure. And there we have our 4-track system. This particular location, the station, is located on that aerial structure. So next steps. We're working very closely with coordination with Caltrain. Some of the key items is the coordination and service planning. We talked about that. That is going to be critical for us to understand what the capacity of the corridor is. We need to look at operations and maintenance. Basically, that means on a day-to-day basis, who's going to operate and maintain the system. It is a shared use system. The systems, we need a compatible electrification, signaling, and communication systems. I talked about the grade crossing improvements that might be needed. In the last bullet, the infrastructure needs, that really gets driven off item 1 is once we understand what the capacity is, we know what service levels we want, we can determine what additional infrastructure may be needed. One of the new options that we're looking at is what we're now calling option B2. If you remember back to the earlier slide of option B1, a play off that is to look at some targeted areas, especially in the downtowns, where we might put some limited covers over the trenches, and really intended to more be these lightweight passenger malls or parking areas. So my team is currently reaching out to the cities and meeting with them, and we'll be evaluating that at the same level we are the other options, A, B, and B1. On the environmental process, our draft environmental document then is going to fully analyze options A, B, B1, and B2, and all of those options will also have the IOP within it. So we'll have a full evaluation of the IOP because there are different possible environmental impacts of the initial project because we still have at-grade crossings. And then on the far end, we'll have the analysis of the full build. Important to note, the choice isn't to just do an IOP. That's only the first phase of the full build system. Then lastly, just a snapshot on the time frame of where we're going. Again, If you look at the first top three bars, that's really all about the phased implementation approach, and through the end of the year, we'll be working with stakeholders on that. Expect to have a draft environmental document out in 2012, July, August 2012, and a final document in the middle of 2013. And that's all. Any questions?
Very good. Any questions from the board at this time? Yes, Ms. Schenk.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's figure it out. There. Thank you for the presentation. You said it's sort of a service. What does that mean in terms of numbers of trains, high-speed trains per day?
In the initial operating phase?
Yes.
And again, I think that has not yet been decided. What we need to...
Ballpark, roughly 1, 10, 25?
It's certainly, I'm going to throw out a number of 1 to 4.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's at the lower side, not 10 or 25.
Okay, so it's 1 to 4 per day?
Per hour. No, per hour.
Per hour. Okay, 1 to 4 per hour. And this initial phase, what are we estimating the total cost will be?
And until we understand whether we need more infrastructure or not, first step is we really need the capacity study completed to understand, are the items that I listed up there the only ones that we need to do, or do we need to do more? We won't have an accurate estimate. We intend to, as part of our 15% design deliverable, which is due in the middle of January, part of that deliverable is a full cost estimate. So the initial operating phase, as well as all of the full build-out phases, will be prepared as part of that.
Still, we know there are ranges and ballparks, and I'd like to hear some range. I won't hold you to it, promise, but I'd like to hear a range. I mean, how many billions are we talking about?
And I'll since you promised that you're not going to hold me to this.
Unless you're going to tell me it's $50 billion, then I will say we're not in the ballpark.
It may well be in the $2 to $4 billion range, maybe. And again, we've done no study on that yet. So that is certainly I'm kind of pulling that number.
All right.
Out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? I know we have members of the public who wish to. Yes, Mr. Hartnett, I'm sorry.
I will have some questions, but I think it'd probably be easier after the public comment.
Very good. First, I'd like to call forward then Mr. Don Gilbert, then Mr. Rob Rolick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm Don Gilbert. I represent San Francisco International Airport. Just want to say first that SFO, of course, supports high-speed rail. It's a great alternative to short-haul flights between the Bay Area and Southern California, and we need those alternatives in order to accommodate in the future our long-haul traffic domestically and internationally. Specifically on this issue, we strongly support at the initial phase terminus at the Transbay Terminal, basically because of our overall support for high-speed rail, the same rationale. We believe that that's how you get the most traffic from the Bay Area on high-speed rail and therefore provide the relief we do need on our domestic flights, short-haul flights between the Bay Area and Southern California. So we hope that you take a very serious look at that at the initial phase. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rob Rodlick, and then Mr. Ben Treposis.
Good morning, Chair Pringle, members of the board, and CEO Van Ark. I'm representing the City of Palo Alto Rail Committee. And recently, Congresswoman Eshoo, Senator Simidian, and Assemblymember Gordon issued a press release. And in that press release, they covered a number of policy issues related to the Peninsula Rail Corridor, including abandoning the EIR planning for the larger project to 2035, eliminating the 4-track option, and focusing on the 2-track option, rejecting the aerial viaduct option entirely, and there's been a lot of stakeholder input from Peninsula cities regarding the aerial option, that the system should be on the existing Caltrain right-of-way. Then recently, City of Palo Alto was fortunate enough to get to attend a San Mateo Rail Corridor Partnership meeting, which was a private meeting with CEO Van Ark and some stakeholders from the county of San Mateo. And basically, in listening to his remarks were in conflict with the remarks made by Congresswoman Eshoo, Senator Simidian, and Assemblymember Gordon. And we'd like to know if his remarks represent the views of the authority. In addition, it's our understanding that new ridership numbers are being prepared for the authority, but that only those numbers can only be provided directly to Mr. Van Ark and not to the public and not to the legislative oversight committees. And we would ask that the authority direct CEO Van Ark to provide those new ridership numbers to the public, to interested stakeholders, and to the city of Palo Alto and others. Also, we sent a letter March 7th to the CEO Van Ark raising the question about the total cost of this project, which is estimated at $66 billion based on numbers that the authority has in their data, but the public cost is $43 billion. We never received a response to our letter. And finally, the City Council Rail Committee has asked to meet in public with CEO Van Ark, has never got a response, and we'd like a response to that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Troposis, and then Mr. Daniel Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. Ben Troposis, City of San Jose. As the board is aware, the City of San Jose has been and continues to be a strong supporter of the California High-Speed Rail project. The capital of Silicon Valley remains committed to becoming the gateway for high-speed trains into the Bay Area. We are in regular collaboration with our partners in Fresno and San Francisco to encourage the near-term development of the Central Valley to Silicon Valley corridor connection as the next leg of high-speed train construction in California. To that end, we strongly support the consideration of the initial operating project for the Peninsula Corridor. As you know, electrification of the Peninsula Corridor has been a long-time goal for both Caltrain and the Peninsula community. Completing the IOP permits the incremental improvement of the Caltrain system and introduces high-speed trains into the corridor sooner. In no small part, we are making this important link to a key destination in the high-speed train system work in a manner conducive to community interest and support, while making the important connection between San Francisco and the expanding statewide system. We look forward to the development of the IOP and its early implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Troposis. Does the City of San Jose, as I look at the alternatives, design options A, B, and B1, in all of those alternatives, I believe none of them would be consistent with the letter that was sent by Mr. Simidian and Ms. Eshoo and others, because there is aerial viaducts in every one of those options.
That's correct. And
reviewed.
We're working with the project teams to ensure that anything that we do at Diridon will accommodate the IOP.
And therefore, in that context, does therefore the City of San Jose not support a letter that was sent out? I mean, what is the city's position on
I'd like to thank the chair for putting me on the spot, but as I'll mention under item 6, the City Council has not taken an official position related to alignments for the project through San Jose. We're working with the project teams on developing what, as we've made the board aware of, the best aerial as well as the best tunnel option through San Jose for consideration. We're working to accommodate the project in a way that makes the project an asset and not an eyesore for the community, as I'm sure we all are, and are going to continue to support the project and work in that end collaboratively as best as we possibly can.
You know, that you did a fine job. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just know that there's a lot of work with the City of San Jose on how to exit Diridon Station. Two of those options that are moving forward were viaducts, aerial viaducts. And I believe that much of the discussion of not having any aerial viaducts would mean those two options would not be a part if, in fact, the direction is to live strictly in conformity to the Semidian issue letter?
That's basically correct, Mr. Chair. As you know, we're limited in terms of the options through downtown San Jose. We are, as I said, looking at both an aerial and an underground option. Authority staff has done a great job in evaluating those options. We've been working with the Community Coalition, as I'll mention, to take a little closer look at that, and we're also working with the community to develop the aerial option through San Jose. So we're still very committed to the aerial possibility. You're correct that the legislator's perspective would certainly limit our ability to pursue the aerial, essentially eliminate the ability. I will say that eliminating the aerial through San Jose will have significant impacts on surrounding neighborhoods at Dearborn Station, as they were initially identified in the program alignment. So it has some potentially far-reaching ramifications.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Kraus, and then following Mr. Kraus, Mr. Patton.
Chairman, members, thank you. Daniel Kraus, Californians for High-Speed Rail. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the initial phase that you're proposing. While our organization supports the idea of phasing, we do have some concerns about how we define phasing. First, do we really need to define it so clearly right now, given the fact that this could be several years off, and maybe things will turn around and we'll anticipate more money coming in for this corridor. Maybe we could do a more significant project versus just electrification, essentially with no grade separations. So I'm just wondering, is there a way to design your study that would allow for more flexibility of how you do your initial phase, so we can get some of the hard stuff out of the way if the money's there? The second point I have is, back a couple years ago, there was an discussion about using the ARA funds for doing an electrification, kind of similar to what we're talking about, but it was based on the Caltrain EIR from 2004. Our organization urges you not to use that document. There's probably useful information in there, but there was several problems with that in terms of, substations being located in the actual right-of-way of where high-speed track would go, which would be a major cost to replace those or move them. So we urge you to actually make sure that the study is based on an authority document in consultation with Caltrain, of course, but that it's done over again. So, if there's tracks of at-grade 4 track in the future that you're anticipating on building, the poles are out of the way, the substations are out of the way, we save some money. So we'd urge you to go that route. And finally, I just want to urge you to resist this Semidian proposal to, not phase in the project at all after you just do one thing. We totally disagree with that. We think it's completely unreasonable, and we urge you to prevail against that position. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Patton and then Mr. Schonbrun.
Gary Patton, Mr. Chairman and members. I am an environmental attorney based in Santa Cruz. I have a special counsel relationship with the Planning and Conservation League and PCL Foundation on high-speed rail issues, and have worked closely in that capacity with the Community Coalition on High-Speed Rail. We're one of these plaintiff groups that is suing you. Mr. Schonbrun already alluded to another group that was doing that. I have 3 points about this topic. First, we are dissatisfied with the program-level environmental impact analysis, and that's what's in litigation. We really think that you should not be making a commitment at the project-level EIR analysis, however you go, until you really have program-level stability. Mr. Schonbrun did give you an option that I think you ought to think about, which is maybe as you react to the Semidian issue, Gordon suggestion, and these various problem areas that we're dealing with in this item, you think about doing it in conjunction with settling that litigation in an appropriate way. My second point is the blended system called for by the Semidian Gordon issue statement is not very much different, as I understand it, from this IOP that your consultants and staff are talking about. And while the groups I'm representing don't endorse that, we do endorse a couple of the minimum standards that are involved, which is no elevated structures as the basic routing up and down the peninsula and staying within the existing Caltrain right-of-way, and we urge you to work to that end. Finally, on this phasing issue, you ought to, we believe, do the project that you can fund now, that makes sense now, and not speculate for something in the future. And if you think you need a capacity analysis, get the ridership analysis first. We think there's a way you can move ahead in a competent, good management way on this particular issue, but not by saying we're going to be able to do whatever we want to do way in the future when everybody is telling you at the Capitol building that's not viable.
Thank you. Mr. Schonbrun, and then Ms. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Schoenbrunn, Transdev. Up until now, the authority's planning has been done on an entirely political basis with no consideration for cost. With the involvement of your CEO, who's been here for a while now, we are starting to see today the introduction of common sense. We appreciate that. Your staff's thinking is more oriented towards fiscal realities than it was previously. A phased project is much more feasible than the four-track project, but the insistence on continuing the planning for the four-track project is very problematic, and it is emblematic of this cost-insensitive past, and as such is still ignoring the elephant in the room. As of now, there is no private capital willing to invest in this project under conditions that meet the requirements of the bond measure. The problem is that no one has been willing to undertake the ridership risk without a revenue guarantee. That would constitute an operating subsidy, which is expressly prohibited by law. And this authority has still not, after over a year, responded to the legislature's demand that it tell the legislature how it's going to cope with that question. And that this is, we believe, is the fundamental reason why there hasn't been a business plan, because nobody's been able to answer that question. We believe that high-speed rail in California has good business potentials. We suspect that the financial community does not trust the ridership model and doesn't feel the route selected by the previous board will perform adequately. Until you get private capital into your project, you don't have a project, period. That's why it makes no sense to build a track in the Central Valley until there is an overall system. That's why we don't support continued environmental work on any of the segments. We urge instead that the authority put this project out to bid now, allowing the winning franchisee to do the engineering and environmental work. It's only then that when you have a franchisee on board that you will have a real project, and that then people can stand behind you and see this project go forward. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hamilton, then Mr. Tolmach.
Hi, I'm Kathy Hamilton. I'm also on the board of CAHSRA. And in the same spirit that one of the other speakers suggested, I wanted to tell you that for the new people, that the alternatives analysis that was done for the Bay Area was always prejudiced. There was not an alternative that was suggested in it other than design options. In 2004, Mehdi Morshed signed the initial MOU. And it did say, subject to the passage, the acceptance of the program-level EIR. But the fact is, that has prejudiced the objective look at routes since the beginning. How could it be that the Altamont Pass never came up as a suggested alternative when the previous California High-Speed Rail Commission approved that route as the best route, the less expensive route, the better route? How could it not? This is extremely political. I also wanted to say thank you so much for studying train capacities. But capacities, as I think Mr. Patton suggested, are based on ridership. You're starting with the premise that you need 4 tracks. Ridership, a proper ridership study, not one done in a back room under the auspices of the very organization who did the first one, That doesn't work. But one that, by the way, Mr. Van Ark's peer review study for the ridership will not really come out with a great report for 2 years. A new ridership model will take approximately 12 to 18 months. So I suggest that you look at Altamont Pass as an alternative and to consider that on this important project. I'm also totally opposed to phasing for the exact same reason. Change the program EIR description as Senator Simitian asked. Shorten it. Amen. But ridership is the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Mr. Tolmich, and then Mr. Saga.
Rich Tomac, California Rail Foundation. Thank you, Chair and members. I think what you're facing here is the consequences of ruling out all other alternatives at a phase that was too early. And it's very similar to what's happened down south, is now that you're coming into financial realities and having to face how to actually build something that's going to perform in this corridor, better alternatives have been screened out. And so when the High-Speed Rail Authority really does want an elevated structure to be able to have a completely grade-separated entry into San Francisco. And so given that, one thing that occurs to a number of the outside observers is that the route between Redwood City and SFO could easily follow 101. There's a number of cases where, in a 2-foot median, there's been able to be created an elevated structure that is in the center of the freeway in a place that really very few people, since the width of the freeway is so great, would object to it. That alternative is not available to you because it was screened out before the true cost and environmental impacts of using the Caltrain corridor were fully assessed. And so now you find yourself in a bind. And my answer would be to back off from these prohibitions of consideration of viable alternatives. And really that's the only way you're going to have a high-speed rail alignment on that part of the peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Saga, and then Mr. Crennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm representing the San Francisco Transportation Authority, and I would like to make just a few remarks as a follow-up to the staff presentation. First of all, I feel privileged to be part of a group who's continuing to give you advice on how to move forward with the high-speed rail program, and I do want to reiterate the city's, San Francisco's very strong support for this program, and we're very grateful to the staff and the opportunity to work in advancing the goal. The presentation correctly mentioned the importance of cost, and we recognize that that's a major issue, but we also think that the proposal to extend the initial phase to Trans Bay can be done for a reasonable cost. A focus on ridership between San Jose and Trans Bay, I think, will serve the authority well. Ridership forecast, as reported within the 2008 business plan within San Joaquin Valley, were on the order of 900,000 passengers per year, and in the San Francisco Peninsula, it's 4.8 million. Huge difference there. Truncated San Francisco service that stops short of Trans Bay is likely to require an expensive and what we believe unnecessary and perhaps even temporary station at 4th and King. We think that for the cost of the station at 4th and King, you could very well build the DTX extension to Trans Bay. The property that's been identified for a station at 4th and King, based upon recent land sales in the area, has a value of some $400 million. That's an awful lot of cost to avoid by not building that station. Again, I acknowledge the fine work done by the staff. We applaud the idea of phasing, and we're eager to continue working with the staff and working with the High-Speed Rail Board in implementing the project. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Crennan, and then Mr. Allen.
Good morning. Part one of what I'm going to say is on behalf of Belmont's Ad Hoc High-Speed Rail Committee, and then part two is going to be me alone.
All right, make sure you tell us clearly when you change.
Yes, I will do that. Belmont's Ad Hoc High-Speed Rail Committee is actively studying the redevelopment opportunities under an aerial alignment through Belmont. The entire Caltrain corridor through Belmont is in our redevelopment area. Here's an opportunity to have it redeveloped on your dime instead of ours. Okay? We're mindful of the experiences in Europe and Japan, doing commercial development under aerial alignments. So we are open to that possibility. The other thing is that an aerial alignment would increase the ability, increase east-west connectivity. Belmont's currently divided in half by Caltrain's right-of-way on a berm. With an aerial structure, we can put streets through underneath it. Okay, we're looking at that opportunity. Okay, that's the end of High-Speed Rail Committee in Belmont, now me. Regarding the money, yes, it's tight now, but this is a 25-year project to full build-out. Administrations will change, the party in control of Congress will change, the economy is going to recover, money will become more available. Okay, don't constrain your view of this project to what the situation is today. Things change. And this is a long-term project.
Thank you. You know what? I appreciated both of your presentations. And but I did have a question. Is a defined aerial structure of Caltrain today, because it's on a berm, is that aerial?
The current Caltrain alignment?
Yeah.
No, it's an impenetrable berm.
But
we can't go
more
through it.
aerial?
And it's not high enough to go under it.
It's aerial, but it's filled in with dirt underneath.
Yeah, I mean, what we're contemplating as an aerial structure through Belmont is something that's 30 feet in the air.
Yeah, and I'm looking at all the options.
Or 20 feet in the air.
Exactly, but I'm looking at all the options being studied through Belmont. I actually was in a little shuttle bus and rode the full Caltrain alignment through Belmont. And I do know that in the letter from Senator Simidian and Ms. Eshoo, that they don't want any aerial alignment. So
that's them.
Have you?
It's a free country. They can express their opinion.
That's true, and I'm just seeing if you have expressed yours to them.
We will.
All right.
We have not yet.
Because I don't know what other options.
We haven't had a meeting since then, since they did their announcement.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to know if there was some consistency in how you can have 3 aerial alignments being studied and no other in Belmont, and still have a high-speed train if there are no aerial alignments.
Okay. Well, we are also open to a covered trench. We're open to any construction.
I see.
I might emphasize that the California High-Speed Rail Committee is a creature of the City Council, but does not speak for the City Council, nor do we actually speak for the city government.
And only sometimes does it speak on behalf of you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The next speaker, Mr. Allen.
I apologize for being late. I took a little tumble and got all bloodied up coming into the meeting here.
Oh, my goodness.
I meant really to speak on item 1. About 18% of Livermore's registered voters, nearly twice the required 10%, have signed an initiative petition to affirm and amend their city's general plan. They seek to keep BART on I-580 to Greenville Road at the foot of the Altamont Pass, with an initial station at the new Isabel 580 interchange, now under construction. Their petition, aimed for the November 8th city election ballot, has gone to the Alameda County Registrar of Voters for signature verification. Passage should mandate the city advocate for I-580 BART, rather than the much more costly subway route being planned by the city and BART, and incidentally, your commission. It would be advisory to BART, this authority, MTC, Caltrans, and other planning and funding agencies. The petition turned into the city this Tuesday, May 3rd, had 8,354 signers, about 18% of Livermore's 46,443 registered voters, gathered by 174 volunteers. Please defer further Altamont corridor planning incompatible with this petition, which I will leave with your staff, pending its qualification for the ballot and the November 8th city election.
Thank you, sir.
And I admire your work. I hope you do a great job.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to the end of public comments on this item. Any comments of members of the board? Mr. Hartnett?
Yes, I have a number of questions. One on the Transbay Terminal, the question on cost of temporarily being at 4th and King versus doing the build-out that would lead directly to the Transbay Terminal. I was wondering if we have some figures on that already that we could talk about a little bit.
Yes, so what is the, Mr. Van Ark, you or a member of your team wish to respond to Mr. Hartnett's question?
I think you know the peninsula in particular because you live there, and you know that 4th and King is basically where the trains are going to come out more or less in any case, because 4th and King is before Transbay Terminal, so that is one advantage. The estimation for the connection between 4th and King, which is not exactly how we'll go, but the connection between 4th and King and Transbay Terminal needs to be in a tunnel, so cut and cover tunnel. There have been some estimations that were not done by us, but they were done by the team, which included Transbay Terminal team, and they were in the magnitude of $2 to $2.5 billion. So, you know, it's a relatively expensive last section to get into the Transbay Terminal itself. And again, I'd like to reiterate what Tim Cobbett said earlier on. It's not that we don't want to go there. It's in Prop 1A. We also believe in it. We believe it's the right way to go. It's just a matter of, you know, it is one of the phases. And if for any reason, because of funding and so on, that section is going to be available, we can go there. That's not the issue. It's really going to be how many billions will we have in that kind of first phase. We definitely have to get too close to, you know, 4th and Kings because we're going to go there in any case. You go past there. And that's going to be a much cheaper solution than going to Transbay. However, if Transbay Terminal and the access is available, we definitely want to go there.
How do you determine availability in that context? Do you mean available in the sense of funds available to do it or some other?
I guess, and I can't speak for Transbay Terminal, but yes, it's going to be a matter of funds at the end of the day. You know, if we are going to have $2 billion in total to get from San Jose, just as an example, don't hold me to it, but to get from San Jose to San Francisco, we have to build the infrastructure between the two. So then we will get to San Francisco, and then there is not another $2 billion available to build the tunnel into Transbay Terminal. However, there could be other funding sources. I mean, the $400 million came through a different, indirectly linked but funding source. And if the tunnel is going to be made available through funding sources, possibly even through some of our indirect funding sources, we would like to use that opportunity. But it's clear that that last mile and a half is an expensive mile and a half. And that's all we're saying. And again, it's not because we don't want to, and it's not because we're not going to. We definitely will get there. but it's just a matter of, if you talk in pieces, in bits, it's something we've got to consider, that it is a relatively expensive last little piece.
Okay. Well, I forgot to mention at the beginning when I was welcomed to the board, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I was a bit surprised, though, with the attorney speakers, those who have sued the authority, that the new members haven't been greeted yet by a lawsuit. I felt a little left out, not having been named yet in a lawsuit. I'm sure there will be opportunity in the future.
We wanted to make sure you had a proper welcome.
Thank you. I do have some questions about the SU Semidia and Gordon proposal, and I know it's not teed up for today and it's not a specific agenda item, but I do think it's something that we should discuss as a board at a more specifically as a later time, if it can be teed
I don't know.
up.
I actually think it might be a good point to discuss it today, because part of my challenge is I look at our authority moving forward, and I believe if we vote for this phased approach, we are basically saying we want to spend money in this corridor and in a development of a plan, and that portions of it are going to be inconsistent with that letter. And therefore, I think, I don't know which signers of the letter participated with our engineering team or our legal team to understand where we are, but let's be honest, going through Belmont is aerial. Sure. And it's planned aerial, and all we will be spending our money on in that section to get it environmentally cleared would be aerial. You get a letter submitted by members of the legislature and Congress basically say don't do any of that, and if you do any of that, there may or may not be ramifications. I don't know why we would spend any money to proceed until this is resolved. And it's interesting, and my nasty comment to Mr. Traposis, because he was the only likely victim, was just, I see two cities at each end who very clearly said today that they want us to continue building this. Many cities along this route, and certainly thousands of people along this route, want us to continue to study this. But if we spend another penny studying this and somehow we're told throw it all away, I think that's a waste of taxpayer money. I don't believe we can fulfill Prop 1A and the requirements that are placed upon us, or fulfill the language that was part of AB 3034, or for that matter even come close to fulfilling the obligation under CEQA by not studying the options that are alternative analysis that are being presented here. So I am really kind of stymied as well to say, do we just want to tell our team to continue to be diligent and focus and engage the communities and study this process, or do we just want to throw it all out and respond to a letter? And I think the board does. If we're not prepared to have that discussion today, so be it. I'm prepared to have it because I don't think we should tell people in San Jose or San Francisco that there is any connection to this system. At least what we hear through a variety of legal interpretations of Prop 1A and CEQA, that we can proceed with this if, in fact, the contents of the letter supersedes what we do and we're told we're not going to get funding, if, in fact, that is something being expressed. And I don't believe it is directly being expressed, but I'm concerned about that in terms of moving forward. So welcome, Mr. Hartnett.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I disagree and agree in part. First of all, the letter is a two-page letter that involves a lot of complex issues, and I don't think the letter is fully states the details of any particular proposal, because it couldn't. So I look at that as in part a starting point. Secondly, we haven't had a presentation by anybody as to what that two-page letter fully means. And so we're left with guessing in some respects. We do know from the budget hearing last week, to which our CEO was invited, that Mr. Semidian has the view that the so-called blended approach that was generally described in their letter can be consistent with Prop 1A, and that a study of what I would call a last phase rather than phase 1 leading to phase 2 could be compliant with the environmental laws. That is not the view of the authority, I believe, but it hasn't been fully fleshed out by the authority so far as I can tell either. Additionally, what I heard at that hearing and listening in through the web was somewhat at variance from what the language of the letter was. For example, I thought the letter said that the build-out would be within the Caltrain right-of-way. Mr. Sabidian said at the hearing, substantially within the Caltrain right-of-way. Well, that's different. There's reference to the proposal being a 2-track proposal. There's already more than 2 tracks in the right-of-way, and there is room for 3 and 4 tracks at certain points in the right-of-way. So it's not a 2-track system as it is now. But it's not clear if you just read the letter what's really being proposed. As to the aerial structures, not just the cities who spoke today, but there are other cities on the peninsula who want an aerial option to be studied. I have to believe that if those cities wish that the legislators aren't going to say, well, gee, if a city wants that to be considered, that should be totally off the table. But because we just are operating on a letter, it's very hard to react to that in a substantive way. So and why I say it's not teed up today is because I think there's a lot that we don't know, just by the whole nature of how this has come about. And I think we should know more before we preclude this. Additionally, at the hearing, Mr. Simidian asked the CEO whether or not there was something that we would be doing today on this item that would preclude us in the future from considering their so-called proposal. And I think the general response was, no, we're not precluded from doing something in the future, but it wasn't a substantial part of the discussion at the hearing. And, I know the longer that time goes by, the more difficult it is to change any decision, as we know from our discussion on I-5 and the Grapevine, that once people have an idea in mind of what might happen, all sorts of planning occurs. People are thinking about how they can work with it, and when you make a change, it affects people's planning and entitlements in some respects. So I think it's significant. Any kind of delay in any decision is significant. But I just think that we shouldn't dismiss it out of hand. We don't have enough information for us to independently conclude that it is either practical or that it is legal. And I don't think they have enough information, the legislators, to conclude completely that it is practical or that it is legal. But I think we need to give some more thought to it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Van Ark, I know you are quickly studying to appear before Mr. Simidian's committee later today. So in the midst of that study, you asked to have additional comments?
I just wanted to make Mr. Hartnett aware of the fact that we agree that the letter, of course, is a very short letter and therefore not all that clear. For exactly that reason, we did ask for clarification from the Senator, because we do believe that we need to understand the underlying reasoning as to how they came to that concept. Because if they could give us responses to our questions, that underlying reasoning could be understood, and we could then understand whether it is in compliance with Prop 1A and CEQA.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Mr.
This is a common question. As was illustrated earlier with respect to the discussion on the Grapevine, we have to be careful not to be fickle with respect to either issues studied or even comments made. But at the same time, we have to be flexible because circumstances change. We know more, political dynamic changes, all sorts of things. And so this is a question, perhaps for one of our future meetings. And that is, and again, we don't want to make too much of concerns expressed by legislators, but we have to take them into account. If we should decide that perhaps under our mandate to build a system from San Francisco to Southern California, that we want to, in building the system, reprioritize. What are our constraints? So, for example, let's say we decide not to prioritize the peninsula, but go to Southern California, for example, the Inland Empire to San Diego. What are our constraints? Perhaps Council can respond under Prop 1A. I understand some of that's in Phase 2. Can we move it up to Phase 1? And what are our practical constraints? So if you can answer that question today, great. If not, I think that's something for future consideration.
I would love to hear the answer to that question.
I think Ms. Schenk also maybe, did you want to? Yeah.
Let's hear it.
I should.
Let's hear
Ms. Schenk actually first posed that question, and to the extent that there's an issue among the board members, it was originally raised by Ms. Schenk.
Thank you for teeing it up and being so diplomatic about it. For the purposes of the new members and the reasonably new members, the reason that we have a Phase 1 and Phase 2, besides funding, is that early on, the Sacramento to San Francisco and the San Diego to Los Angeles corridors were not seen as priority. I can speak for the Los An corridor. That was not seen as a priority because when we, a very different group of us, had a meeting in San Diego about 5 years ago, there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for the project because they were looking at maglev. Over the 5-year period, a lot has changed, and that entire corridor has transformed, and there is a significant amount of support in the corridor amongst the 4 counties through which high-speed rail would traverse. The speakers who brought up the issue of ridership and modeling, you don't need a model in the Los An corridor. The ridership is there and has been there since the early 80s. It is the second busiest rail corridor in the United States in terms of ridership, and on snow days probably the busiest when the Northeast corridor is shut down. So the ridership is there. Every modeling that has been looked at shows that it can be a very profitable corridor. Building on what Commissioner Umberg said, the issues along the peninsula are not new. I mean, there's some things that have just been brought up in recent days, but they really build on what I have seen as a long history of dissension, opposition, lawsuits, very, very real and good concerns on the one end to NIMBYism on the other end. I think that Prop 1A, the way I read it anyway, allows some flexibility for redirecting funds, and if a certain segment of Phase 1 fails or cannot be implemented in a timely manner. And so I agree with Commissioner Umberg. I would like to know what are the findings that have to be made to, under Prop 1A or any other applicable laws and the funding of AHSRA, et cetera, to say that a segment just is not going to move ahead, and to what are the steps then that the Phase 2 corridors have to take to be ready to step in to take advantage of the funding should we make the findings that need to be made. And let me just conclude by saying that listening to Senator Simitian and my former congressional colleague and dear friend, Congresswoman Eshoo, et cetera, what I'm hearing, to be blunt, is a bailout of Caltrain. And I, for one, don't want to see our precious high-speed rail funds that were so hard to come by, and I'm speaking as a person who was there at the very beginning in 1981 when it was truly just a fantasy and a pipe dream. And now we're at the point where we have money. I don't want to use those monies to bail out any regional transportation system, including the Surfliner in my own community, and especially Caltrain and others. So with that, I'm very interested in hearing what steps we can take.
I'm Deputy Attorney General Amy Wynn. I'm the council's, or the board's counsel at the Attorney General's office. I can't answer your question of all the findings that are necessary and what steps do you have to take. That's something that would require study and coordination and consultation, and I'm not prepared to give a response to that today. However, I will just second your statement that my understanding of Prop 1A about the prioritization of the segments is also that there is flexibility in the statute. That is, of course, a question that we'd have to look at and study, but and I want to take care that we listen to Chairman Pringle's concerns that we not send off any signals or show our fickleness, but yes, there is flexibility in the law.
Well, Mr. Chairman, could we ask staff to ask council to give us that information? It is purely the information, if it is possible, what are the steps, et cetera. I think all of us would at least like to be educated about that.
Yes, I think that would be good direction, good knowledge to have, and under every circumstance, just to know what those options would be. Thank you, Ms. Schenk.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Hartnett.
That's consistent with what I had in mind in terms of us evaluating the proposal. The kind of findings that have to be looked at and determining what findings and what you're comparing it against, I think that's the same kind of effort that I think has to be made to understand at all whether what is being proposed is practical and legal. Because certainly, I think it's beyond just listening to legislators. It is not a bailout of Caltrain, from my perspective. It is making, how will this system most effectively work in a way that it can be funded and to get to the Transbay Terminal and have the ridership that, be able to have the capacity to carry the ridership that is predicted and for it to be a sustainable system. And so, I think it's important that we have an open mind as to how to do that. I'm not saying we fundamentally change things, but I think we have to have an open mind. And I just don't think, unless we have the kind of analysis that was just discussed, that we can say for sure.
Yeah, and I believe you have full knowledge of what this board has done in the past, but so forgive me if I say something you already know. But I think this board has been very open to looking at alternative ways to deliver the mandate that is the requirement of this board. And in fact, in Southern California, when many of these same issues were evident in terms of adding 2 additional grade-separated tracks, this board voted to move forward with a shared track option and to work with the FRA, find out how it can work in a legal, safe, proper way to also meet the requirements of CEQA, Prop 1A, and 3034. If some option is presented that says all of this work that has been done up till now in studying multiple options has an impact that is not sustainable, but here are other options we wish to study that still meet the parameters of Prop 1A, CEQA, and 3034, I don't believe this board in any way would turn its back on studying and looking at other options. But there is going to be a point in which we say you got to stop adding new options and study what you have and come to a conclusion, and then you decide how to build out that approved plan. That doesn't mean the first day you build it to its maximum capacity. And I think that's what this issue is today. We have it approved under CEQA, and then we decide and determine how best to implement that. And it doesn't mean you build out everything to that full capacity. But my challenge is, are I'll be blunt, are we just wasting our time because the senator in this area and the congresswoman and others in the area are just going to say, unless you do it this way, it doesn't work. And I may be too blunt about this, but I did think I read in the letter that it said 2 tracks in the right-of-way, all within the existing right-of-way, and no aerial structures. I believe that's what I read in the letter. So if that's not what they meant, that's good. I mean, and any subsequent letter that's sent that says we didn't mean what we said, that's great. And if the subsequent letter says, but we would like to continue to look at ways to have shared track use with Caltrain and to address the full requirements under all of those other means, I think this board should be open, and I personally am. That's not what I have heard. So we stand, I think, here saying we'd like any of those other alternatives presented, be that by the locals or others. But one of my challenges, I don't know why we would spend, as Ms. Schenk pointed out, high-speed rail dollars to electrify a corridor in which we may never be able to build in. I believe there was that end around by a previous SU letter, by the way, that said specifically, give us the high-speed rail money so we can electrify Caltrain. And is this the exact same means, but through the state legislature as opposed to through Congress to the Secretary of Transportation? I'm not interested in spending high-speed rail money for other projects than high-speed rail. If they benefit some other projects, great. So that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out is it a true intent to see high-speed rail service all the way to Transbay Terminal, which is my goal and the voters' goal, or is this letter smoke screen just a way to say we want to make sure we capture a greater share of these for our local rail uses? I don't really know, but I think we should be open to hear other alternatives that are in compliance with CEQA and Prop 1A. So this is an item before us. It talks about study. I would suggest I'm not prepared to vote for this now. And why I'm not prepared to vote for this now is because I don't, if someone's going to tell us, oh, we need to add 15 more options in or 2, or take out all of the options that we have and study something brand new, I don't know why we would spend another penny at this moment in time until, as Mr. Hartnett said, we have clarity and we know what we're moving forward with. So I would like to continue this item. I probably should make a motion to stop spending any more engineering money in the entire corridor. I think that's probably the right thing to do, and just stop spending money and see if other participants within this corridor really care about this corridor or not, or if there's just 1 or 2 participants that care and everybody else doesn't. I don't know necessarily the right move. But I certainly don't want to move this forward and ask our staff to study even further options when all of them may be thrown off the table by somebody. Comment, Ms. Schenk?
Thank you. No, I agree. That's exactly the point that I was trying to make. If we're we have such limited staff resources, and we basically have 5 people on staff. We should be carefully directing their time to things that are possible. And I can't support this motion today either, obviously. And instead, I would like to see us direct our staff to address the questions that both Tom and I brought up about other phases and the steps to take to bring clarity to that issue.
Therefore, is there any objection to continuing item 6 or item 5 to our next agenda? Seeing no objection? Very good. Item number 6.
Thank you. This agenda item is intended to serve as the release of the supplemental alternative analysis report for the San Jose to Merced section. The supplemental alternative analysis proposes changes to the preliminary alternative analysis for the San Jose to Merced section that you approved at your June 3rd, 2010 board meeting. These recommended changes are based upon input received since that meeting and additional analysis that has been done since then. This particular presentation today focuses on only a portion of the section south of San Jose to Merced, We are in the process of developing visual design guidelines in partnership with the City of San Jose, and we'll come back to you with recommendations for the San Jose section once that work is completed with the city. The full supplemental AA is on the website, and all of our alternative analysis recommendations today and for the items that follow this are subject to U.S. EPA and U.S. Army Corps of Engineer concurrence. This is an action item requesting your approval of the supplemental AA. At this point, I'll introduce Dave Manson, project manager from Parsons for the San Jose to Merced section. Dave?
Thank you, Dan. Chairman Pringle, members of the authority, as Dan points out, this is the next section to the south and east of the peninsula section that just made a presentation. It's a section that goes from the San Jose station over to the Merced-Fresno section and connects with it leading up to Merced. To evaluate this back in 2010 and this particular time also, we divided our section into, it's 120 miles, we divided our section into subsections, and I'm going to be presenting what we found in the preliminary alternatives analysis first, and then what we're suggesting in terms of the supplemental. The first subsection is the downtown approach, and we did look at a number of alternatives. This is in the preliminary alternatives analysis, ultimately suggesting an 87-280 alternative that was originally proposed by the city of San Jose. Monterey Highway, in the preliminary alternatives analysis, we suggested we do additional engineering, which we have done, to combine two alternatives and take advantage of both of those alternatives. For the Morgan Hill-Gilroy section, this is an area where we've had a lot of input, but in the preliminary alternatives analysis, the red line at the bottom, and by the way, left is to the north and right is to the south. The red line at the bottom is the original 2008 program alignment that happens to be adjacent to the Union Pacific Railroad from the Coyote area down through Gilroy. At the request of the city of Morgan Hill, we went and added an alternative adjacent to US 101, and what you see here in the preliminary alternatives analysis are those two basic alignments, the next to the UP, the next to 101, and then we looked at two station options, one east of Gilroy and one in downtown Gilroy. So the preliminary alternatives analysis proposed four alignments with one station selected with US 101 and the program alignment. In the Pacheco Pass area, we did a number of evaluations of alternatives and proposed two alternatives which vary particularly up near the San Luis Reservoir and the effects on that reservoir. And finally, in the Central Valley, as you see here, the dashed lines are ones that we looked at that were not suggested to be carried forward. We proposed to look at Henry Miller Road to Avenue 24 and Henry Miller Road to Avenue 21. Since June 2010, we've held 81 meetings throughout this corridor, and you can see with various stakeholders, 870 people have attended our public meetings, and we've heard a number of recommendations that I'll be presenting here from various stakeholders. Supplemental, as Dan pointed out, the alternatives analysis is posted. We've gotten comments back from a number of people, and I'm going to be focusing on three subsections today: Morgan Hill, Gilroy, Pacheco Pass, and San Joaquin Valley. We're deferring recommendations for the city of San Jose because as Dan and Ben Traposa said, we're working with the city of San Jose collaboratively to develop visual design guidelines for that city. So we'll come back to the board at a later point in time to talk about these two subsections in the city of San Jose. Proposed additional alignments in the Morgan Hill-Gilroy area. Gilroy asked us to look at not only the at-grade alignment over in the East Gilroy area, but an aerial design option in this East Gilroy area that would allow us to accommodate future roadways. Here are the roadways shown in the Gilroy specific plan, and the aerial then would allow those roadways to go underneath the alignment. In the preliminary alternatives analysis, we had an aerial alignment through Morgan Hill. Morgan Hill did ask us to look at an at-grade alternative, and Gilroy asked us to look at an at-grade alternative, and we proposed a trench back in June 2010. Gilroy also asked us to look at a partially covered trench. Let me talk about the at-grade alternative first. Because of the parallel roadways to the alignment in the Union Pacific Railroad area are so close, we would have to raise the alignment approximately, from 0 to 15 feet to allow for underpasses to occur without affecting the parallel roadways, Monterey Highway. So this particular at-grade alternative for either for Morgan Hill and for Gilroy would be on a retained fill between 0 and 15 feet high. Because of that, we would also be raising the Union Pacific Railroad because we would not be able to cross that if we did not raise the Union Pacific also. Here's a visual simulation of a retained fill in Morgan Hill. Here's a roadway undercrossing, typical roadway undercrossing. As you can see, by raising the two alignments, or the two tracks, 4 tracks, it allows us to get the clearances we need on the underpass without affecting the parallel roadways. Here's a visual photo, actually, of the Howard Street in San Carlos with this type of approach to the underpass. The benefits of an at-grade is it does create additional safety, eliminating the UPRR at-grade crossings. They would no longer need to sound their horns, Caltrain, UPRR, or Amtrak. We can maintain major cross-street continuity at the underpasses, and we can improve traffic circulation on those through streets. The low embankment would have less visual impact than the higher aerial alternative presented back in the preliminary AA. The concerns we have with the at-grade would be local streets. Some local streets would terminate at the underpasses and at the at-grade alignment, and there would still be visual, noise, property, and traffic impacts, but that's true for all of the alternatives through Morgan Hill and Gilroy. A concern also would be the need for us to continue coordination with the Union Pacific Railroad during construction. For the Pacheco Pass, we did some realignment through the engineering process to avoid some landslide areas, so it varies from the preliminary to what we have at this point. But we still retained the two alternatives to be carried forward, the one close to 152 and the one away from 152 up in the San Luis Reservoir area. In the Central Valley, we're proposing to add an alternative adjacent to State Route 152. Actually, we would be about 450 feet south of that particular corridor to allow for expansion and reconstruction of 152 in the future and putting in the ramps to a reconstructed 152. So this goes from Henry Miller Road along 152 and then down to a Y that would meet the current Y in the Merced-Fresno alignments. We will, however, continue to work with agricultural and community stakeholders to review viable alternatives for the Y connection. The Merced-Fresno AA was released earlier, and the recommendations in there are available on the High Speed Rail website. So let me quickly summarize what we were proposing to add to our section. For the UPRR to downtown Gilroy, we would add an at-grade, a partially covered trench. For the UPRR to East Gilroy, we would add an at-grade and also an aerial alternative to accommodate future roadways. For the US 101, add an at-grade, a partially covered trench, and for the US 101 to East Gilroy, add an aerial in the station area. Downtown Gilroy Station would either be an aerial, a trench, or partially covered trench, or at grade, and the East Gilroy Station would either be at grade or aerial in the station area. Both of the Pacheco Pass alignments have been refined to avoid landslide areas, and we would add one alternative in the Central Valley that leads from Henry Miller Road to south, but close to State Route 152, down to an Avenue 21Y. Our next steps, we're completing our technical studies at this point and are proposing to release a draft EIS for public review early next year with a final record of decision at the end of next year. So I welcome any questions or comments.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions from board members at this time? Seeing none, there are a few members of the public that wish to have a comment on this. First, Mr. Ben proposes from the City of San Jose, then Mr. Perry Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. And just to finish the thought, we've been supportive, the City of San Jose has been supportive of the mandate for high-speed rail for over a decade. And that calls for, as you are all too aware, high-speed rail service from the City of San Francisco to Los Angeles and Anaheim. And that presumes frequent service in that peninsula corridor. Anything that diverges from that, we'd be opposed to, and we're prepared to communicate that opposition.
Thank you.
We appreciate the opportunity for further study of the San Jose alignment in consideration of the supplemental alternatives analysis for the San Jose Merced project segment. As you know, city staff is working with both the San Francisco to San Jose and San Jose to Merced project teams on development of the, as I mentioned earlier, best aerial and best tunnel alignments through the city of San Jose. City Department of Transportation staff, working with the Community Coalition, will be submitting a detailed recommendation of a modified tunnel alignment through downtown San Jose to the authority staff for further consideration, along with a recommendation that the revised tunnel alignment be included in the draft EIS-EIR. We believe that this revised option is worthy of serious analysis that can only be completed by including it in full environmental review. We're also happy to report that the development of the visual design guidelines, as Dave mentioned, for the best aerial option through San Jose is moving forward and producing great results. We've begun a community working group process where community members are working with the project teams to identify the preferred visual, aesthetic, and urban design elements that should be reflected in an aerial high-speed train facility through the city of San Jose. We've begun to receive meaningful input from the working groups, and we expect to have a toolkit of aesthetic solutions completed by July of this year. We appreciate the opportunity to continue to work with the authority in the development of these project alignment options and on the continued development of the high-speed train system into the Bay Area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Woodward, and then following the Councilman Steve Tate. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. Perry Woodward, Gilroy City Council. I'm a member of the task force that was formed by the City of Morgan Hill and the City of Gilroy to deal with the high-speed rail implications for our communities. I want to thank Mr. Van Ark. In the last 6 months, we've had excellent dialogue. Mr. Van Ark, along with Mr. Levitt, been down to our community 3 times. They have personally walked our downtown in Gilroy. They've seen some of the challenges. He's explained some of the engineering challenges that go along with bringing high-speed rail through our community, and we appreciate that. We have a historic downtown. We've been working very hard to revitalize that downtown for a number of years. It was affected by moving Highway 101 out of our downtown. It was affected by some other factors. We've been slowly rebuilding it. We want to keep it nice. High-speed rail, our station is right in that historic core, and so we appreciate these additional alternatives. In particular, we appreciate the studying of a partially covered trench. I was very encouraged to see some of the photos on the prior agenda item which showed a park-like setting. That's kind of what we're hoping for in our downtown, and it would actually make a high-speed rail station in Gilroy an asset rather than what a lot of people fear it could become. So in conclusion, we welcome these alternatives. We hope you'll move forward with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tate, then Ms. Sheets Saucedo.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, sir.
I have the privilege of serving as the mayor of the wonderful community of Morgan Hill. We realize that when we connect the high-speed rail between San Jose to our north and down to Los Angeles, that it will come through our community. And so we have the goal of minimizing all the environmental impacts that will create, the visual impacts, the noise impacts. And we also want to make sure that we avoid creating a barrier that separates the east side of our community from the west side. So in pursuit of that goal, we've asked the authority to study additional alternatives, such as this at-grade alternative that still accommodates grade separation at our major arterials. And for these alternatives, we do insist that the EIR provide the full study of the impacts and that the visual simulations, that we get visual simulations along with those studies. Over the past few months, we've worked very closely with the authority's top management and consultant team to meet our objectives. While we await the full environmental analysis before expressing a preference for any single alternatives, we are pleased that the new alternatives analysis that's before you now meet the interests and accommodate the high-speed rail with minimum adverse impacts on the community of Morgan Hill. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to say Sheets Saucedo. Let's see if I came close.
Good morning, Chairman Pringle and board members. My name is Yvonne Sheets Saucedo. I'm a Gilroy resident, and I've been following this project very closely for about 2 years, and I've attended every public meeting and have conducted a few of my own. I've met with elected officials and many other shareholders. Not in any of these meetings has evidence been produced to support the proposed alignment, station, and 6,600 car parking in East Gilroy as a viable option. I am concerned that this board is not receiving critical information. First and foremost, the East Gilroy alignment was not studied in your program EIR. The authority has been notified by LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission of Santa Clara County, that the proposed East Gilroy Station is located within the agricultural preserve area and on prime agricultural lands. The Gilroy Historical Society has stated, and I quote, "If they had tried, the high-speed rail project could not have picked a more significant historic area to run the train through. It will wipe out the very foundation of Gilroy." The Santa Clara County Farm Bureau has notified the authority that the land east of Gilroy is the best remaining farmland, and constructing a rail station in that region would be counter to everything in society we're trying to protect. In addition, the East Gilroy alignment does not meet the basic requirements of the authority's own station principles and guidelines. As you've indicated today, why would you continue to spend precious funds on an option without merit or support? I urge the board to carefully consider this information and not simply allow the East Gilroy alternative to be carried forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Samuelson. Sorry I didn't notify you ahead of time.
Good morning, Chairman Pringle, members of the authority. My name is Brad Samuelson, and I represent Preserve Our Heritage from Madera and Merced counties. Preserve Our Heritage has been participating in the California High-Speed Rail environmental review process for many months, and once again, I appreciate the opportunity to provide comments. Preserve Our Heritage has significant concerns regarding Agenda Items 6 and 7. In particular, the majority of the alignments being recommended to be carried forward in the Chowchilla area disregard the use of existing corridors and the input provided by local elected bodies as well as private citizens. Preserve Our Heritage maintains that in order for the authority to fulfill its obligations and under Proposition 1A, CEQA, NEPA, the Clean Water Act, and other state and federal land use regulations, the high-speed rail alignment must follow existing transportation corridors, such as Highway 99, the UP alignment, and State Route 152. Accordingly,
Preserve Our Heritage requests that the authority remain true to its word and honor its commitment to preserve agricultural lands by using existing corridors. The San Jose to Merced Supplemental Alternatives Analysis Report introduces and recommends that the Henry Miller Road to State Route 152 to Avenue 21 alignment be carried forward and analyzed in the project EIR-EIS. The report states that this new alignment is in response to Preserve Our Heritage and others concerned about impacts to agriculture and our preference for an alignment adjacent to Highway 152. While we appreciate the authority's acknowledgement of our preference for using established corridors, this new alternative does not satisfy our concerns relative to the loss of agricultural lands. This subsection is approximately 30 miles long, yet the route only follows an existing corridor for 4.5 miles. The authority should reintroduce the Henry Miller to Highway 152 alignment and evaluate it in the project EIR-EIS. The authority withdrew this subsection from further consideration because it was found to be impracticable due to constructability issues regarding Highway 152. I'd like to add that I'm encouraged by Mr. Levitt's comment that he's reevaluating looking at the 152 corridor. That is of utmost concern to our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Seeing no further public comment on this, any further comments by the board? I would entertain a motion to adopt the supplemental alternative analysis that was presented by staff. Motion by Ms. Shank, seconded by Mr. Richards. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes with unanimous vote. And now, if we may, move to item number 7.
Morning, Board. I appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. I am Jeff Abercrombie. I'm the Area Program Manager for the Authority in the Central Valley. And item number 7 is an action item. This action item covers the supplemental analysis that you had previously seen in April of 2010 and again in August of 2010. And it reflects continued efforts to work with the stakeholders in the area to work on mitigation efforts and also a product of our value engineering efforts. It comprises of at-grade stations in Fresno and Merced, as well as reducing the overall length of aerial structures. These alignments that we're going to present are still subject to EPA and the Army Corps concurrence, and I'd like to introduce our program manager for the Merced to Fresno section, Dick Wenzel.
Okay, so I'm going to take you on a quick tour of exactly what Jeff was talking about. I'm going to do a little history for you. A little background could help. I'll lay out the physical 65-mile corridor. I'll take you back to April, a year ago, when you saw your first alternatives in the preliminary alternatives analysis, and then 4 months later adopted new refined alignments to carry forward to this point. Mentioned the outreach program and value engineering, which we're just starting to initiate, and we'll carry forward. And then there's 2 recommendations, and we'll talk about the next steps. So this is the layout of the alternatives that you saw in April of 2010. And you can see the red alignment is the alternative A1, which is the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad corridor. To the left is Merced on the north, 65 miles straight across the page. To the south is Fresno. To the west, you can see alignments coming in. Those are the connectors from Gilroy you just heard about, and I'll talk about those in a few minutes. August 5th, you refined the carried forward alternatives. You'll notice that on the red line, A1, up in La Grande, it's just south and east of Merced. There's multiple routes now. We had initially
alignments going through LeGrand. We have a LeGrand bypass, so we added some options there. You'll notice from the east-west alignment that the middle alignment of the three has disappeared. Now we have Avenue 24 to the north, which is on the left side. The Avenue 22 has disappeared at that point with your approval, and Avenue 21 is the other alternative on the south end. Significantly also was the West Chowchilla bypass, which you'll see as the green line, A2, comes south from Merced. There's a turquoise line that moves off to the west and then curves back into Avenue 24 and moves back into the A2 green alignment along Route 99 and Union Pacific Railroad, which is the green alignment. That came to the benefit of that was we added 4 miles of aerial track where that Avenue 24 connector went to Merced, and it allowed us to eliminate 14 miles of aerial along Route 99 UP corridor through the center of Chowchilla. And so that was an option we employed to investigate along with the straight-through Chowchilla aerial. So that was a 10-mile reduction in the aerial alignment. So since then, we've been looking at those alternatives. We've been out in the public significantly in the last 9 months. We've had 21 public meetings with various groups, anywhere from cities, transportation agencies, public information and stakeholders, elected official briefings, the agricultural groups, the farm bureaus, several tribal consultations, and that's in line with what we've been doing for over the life of the project for the last 2.5 years, which is about 108 meetings. Value engineering concept. This is going to be something that's continuous through the life of the project. It's gaining speed. Initially, we're in the conceptual engineering phase up to 15%. So it really will kick in a strong way when we go to 30% engineering, as well as with the development of more engineering in the final design, in the design build package. But at this stage, we're looking at more of design refinements because we're gathering information at the early stages of our engineering through 15%, as well as getting the impacts from the environmental assessments that are guiding us to do better on the preliminary and conceptual engineering. There will be benefits, of course, reduced impacts from the reaction to the environmental assessments and more efficient construction as well as operations, and costs will also be coming down. Benefits that will result from the value engineering throughout the life of the project will, you heard earlier about grade separations. They really are, in addition to community benefits that allow the elimination of train whistles and horns. You heard about that. I would add emergency vehicle access is really significantly important for the communities, and this aids that a lot, as well as improves traffic flow. So to focus a little bit on our current status with the 65-mile corridor at the conceptual engineering stage, we're looking at focusing on reducing the elevated structures to at grade in this particular instance because we have developed modified geometry which initially required us to, on curves where we were going from transitioning from at grade to aerial or vice versa, on the curves, we were unable to, on the initial design criteria, to do overlapping of those curves. And what we've come up with now is a modified geometry which is going to allow us to concurrently do the two safely. It's done a lot of places in the world, so that has allowed us to bring the aerials down to at grade significantly in between the stations. And we've also been working very, very well with the City of Merced and the City of Fresno to identify areas where we could bring the alignments down at the station locations as well as through the communities. And to them, it's an enhancement of traffic flow because they will rid themselves of grade separations along the way and improve the traffic flows, and visual and noise impacts will be lessened, not eliminated, but lessened. So let me give you a visual here of all of these changes and where they're located. Again, if you look at this, these are the previous at-grade and elevated profiles as you saw them in your last meeting in August, with the addition of one other alternative called the hybrid, and I'll describe that in a minute. But the blue areas are aerial structures, the green areas are at grade. And the blue areas will be modified to drop down to at grade in some portions of this presentation. The hybrid you see here, you see the standard A1 alternative, which is the red line, which is the Burlington Northern line. It's not red here, but the Burlington Northern line to the east. You have the A2 alignment, which comes through the center of your screen from left to right, which is along Route 99 and Union Pacific Railroad. And then there's the hybrid, which is a combination of, on the north end near Merced, it's the A2 alignment with the West Chowchilla bypass, which it moves westward and comes back to the A2 alignment. And then it moves to the A1 alignment on the south end around south of Chowchilla, north of Madeira, and it skirts the eastern side of Madeira. So the two of them together provide the hybrid alternative. All right, so let's focus on the A1 alternative. Again, blue is aerial, green is at grade. When we optimize the profile, trying to bring it down, you'll see appearing here some very fat green lines, which gives you the indication of where an aerial turned to an at grade. And that occurs specifically in the downtown Merced station area and the southern approach to Merced. In the Y connection, the Y connection is really important, and I didn't mention before, but I will now, that the Y is where the east-west alignment merges into our north-south alignment. The east-west alignment can either go south to Fresno or north to Merced, a very difficult area to locate because it makes a large triangle. And so the alternatives and the West Chowchilla design option that I referred to earlier was actually a solution of moving the large triangles you see on the map here to a smaller triangle that got out of triangulating the city of Chowchilla in the center, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. So here's the third benefit area, North Fresno and Station, a significant run through from the San Joaquin River, crossing over southward through Herndon and then through the city of Fresno, a significant location where we can bring down aerial to at grade as well as at the station. The alternative A2, we'll take a look at that one now. It's the one from Merced straight along Highway 99 and Union Pacific Railroad right to Fresno. After the optimizing, not surprisingly, again, Merced benefits from that, as well as the southern approach is even extended more. The other area, and there's the downtown Merced station area improvement or alternative bringing the aerial down. And then we have, again, some Y connection improvements on the curves that are transitioning between at grade and aerial. And then, again, the North Fresno and station, which didn't change with this alternative because they're common to both. The hybrid alternative. This is where leaving, Merced along A2, curving west of Chowchilla, coming back up to Highway 99, crossing it and going over into the hybrid goes east of Madeira and then back into Fresno. So we optimized that. We picked up even more benefits as far as aerial to at grade. The first one, again, downtown Merced station and the southern departure or approach. More Y options, improvements here. Then the Madeira Acres east of Madeira, that's an improvement area where aerial can go to at grade. And then again, the benefit of North Fresno and station is similar as the others. So all three of them together, if you look at it here once more as a summary, you have the blue is aerial, green is at grade, and when you optimize them, you come up with the hybrid has the best of options to bring aerial to at grade. If you look at the chart below, the A1 alternative, it's about 9 to 10 miles of reduction in aerial to at grade. Similarly, A2 along UP right-of-way and Highway 99, it's about 9 miles. When you look at the hybrid, you get a combination benefit. It's about 13 miles of reduction aerial to at-grade. There are other benefits here, too, and they've been alluded to by other speakers already, but in Merced, by bringing the aerial down to at-grade, we have road modifications and pedestrian access which are beneficial to the city, closing 2 existing at-grade crossings of UP Railroad, providing a new grade separation along G Street, and providing a new pedestrian bridge around B Street. These are, deemed by the city to be, very positive. Also, down in Fresno, closing 8 grade crossings with the UP, a significant number. Also, the city has been advancing a Veterans Boulevard interchange grade separation project. For us to complete ours, we would help and need to implement a phase 1 of that project, which didn't exist before, so that would advance their project along while taking care of our needs. And there would be 4 new grade separations that would be implemented that's in tandem with the closure of 8 crossings. A quick look at Merced itself, and you can see where you saw the previous station footprints. There, 2 of them are north of Martin Luther King Jr. Way, and they were in aerial configuration. The new revised station would be south of Martin Luther King to the southeast end of the city and at grade. Fresno, similarly, you can see the previous Fresno station, which was at the southern end of this grouping. The 2 alternative at grades would be one at Kern Street, just north of the previous station site. That's near the Chuck Chansey baseball stadium. And then there's the Mariposa Street footprint, which is a little bit more north of that. So these are the 2 with the city's support, and we're working with them very carefully. And so I've just already previewed this slide. Very important to know what they feel and how they feel, the communities, the agencies, and the city of Fresno and the city of Merced are supportive of these reductions from aerial to at grade, as long as the grade separations are included, which is appropriate for the project. Caltrans, no changes were resulting from our aerial to at grade work along Highway 99, so status quo is maintained. They're continuing to work with us, as are the 2 railroads. So before you today, 2 recommendations are both related to profile refinements. Elevated to at grade, downtown Merced and Fresno stations are being recommended to be carried forward. We do not recommend that the elevated stations be carried forward from here on. And then similarly, elevated structures between the stations. Carry forward the profile refinements to reduce elevated structures and increase at-grade elements whenever it makes sense. The final slide, next steps. You've seen similar layouts. We have gotten to the point where we finished the white. That's 15% design engineering is wrapping up right now. The administrative draft EIS-EIR is just about ready to be reviewed by the lead agencies and coordinating and cooperating agencies. And then the document will be circulated this summer, end of June, beginning of July. All this leads to a notice of decision record of decision notice of determination by February of next year. And that concludes my presentation.
Very good. Are there any committee members' questions? Yes, Mr. Umberg.
Just briefly, what are the cost implications of each of the alternatives?
Of the 3 alternatives, I'll give you just a very general range, of course. We're at the very early stage of 15%. But between 3 alternatives, giving or taking the various east-west connectors, it's approximately an order of magnitude of $5 to $7 billion with these aerials included. And if the implementation today of bringing the aerials down to at grade as recommended, that would be about between $700 to $900 million construction cost savings. Now, you got to remember that that you put something on the ground, there are associated other costs that come with it. But I'm just talking pure construction of the system. And again, we put it on the ground. We will have some overcrossings, eliminations, and we'll have some grade separations. So, but from construction cost perspective, it's about a 2/3 to $1 billion savings on the aerial refinements.
Okay, and with respect to the stations, the at-grade stations and so forth?
That's a good question. I don't know if I had that readily answerable, but I just had it more in miles, miles of aerial. The stations have, there's about a mile of complication getting in and out of the station. So I'd probably say between $50 and $100 million savings on a station.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Any further comments? Thank you very much. And there are members of the public who wish to be heard on this item. First speaker, Mr. Cole Upton. Following Mr. Upton, Mayor CAHSRA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, Mr. Van Ark. I first appeared before you in 2009, Mr. Pringle. My name is Cole Upton. I'm a farmer, but I'm also a public elected official in 2 water districts in Merced and Madera counties. You counseled me to not come here and tell you what I didn't like. You said roll up your sleeves and start working with high-speed rail and see what you can come up with that'll work. And I did that. You didn't tell me it changed my life for the last 2 years, but it has. I went to every technical working group meeting. I went to your public information meetings. I met with Mr. Van Ark, with the consultants, and everything. And we had engineers come up with routes that we presented to you folks. And to reverse paraphrase Winston Churchill, never has so much time, so much effort, so much money been put into something with no result. Okay? So I'm a little disappointed. I'm continuing to work with you folks. But I got to tell you, some of these options are abominable. And I'm talking about Mr. Wenzel, my friend. He comes up, he calls it a hybrid. I call it a mutant. Okay? It does not even follow any existing corridors in some area, not even a county easement. And it really destroys our water district and the facilities. In addition to that, there's a public safety issue. It's flood control. The northern part of that West Coast bypass option goes through the Dutchman Creek area. There is no flood control device on Dutchman Creek. The farmland floods. What doesn't flood is Highway 99 and the UP train because it was designed that way. And it's going to continue that. So your train is going to go through the floodplain. You even have the Harris Dieger maintenance yard scheduled there. Now, I suppose it could double as a boat repair facility when the floods are there. But you've got to start listening to us. And what I would ask from you, Mr. Chairman, is to give the same advice to your people that you gave to me. Work with the locals and see if we can come up with something that will work together. But I'd also ask, and this is a supposition on my part, I may be wrong, I don't think your locals have the authority to make the decisions. All we get when we go to these meetings is we feel your pain and there's nothing we can do about it. We can solve this problem, but we've got to work together and you folks got to start listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mr. Mayor. Following Mr. Mayor, then Mr. Supervisor. Hooray. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Pringle and members of the board. My name is Jim CAHSRA, and Chairman, I've been demoted from mayor, and now I'm councilman. But I'm still, you can make a note on that.
And you're still welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll make my comments brief. We are very aware of the complexities of the route alternatives in Madera County. We are also aware of the challenges of locating the Y connection. If one looks at what works best for the totality of Madera County and the high-speed rail project, one will conclude that the Avenue 21 and the A1 connection is the best route selections, best fit. We in Chowchilla have stated in the beginning all along that we support the Avenue 21 and the A1 alignment. We've also stated that we stand ready at any time to sit down with anyone to discuss this project. It is only through high levels of communication that this project will be constructed in a timely manner. The high-speed rail staff has indicated that such communication is forthcoming, and we applaud this direction. In addition, I want to thank Mr. Van Ark for his open communication and meetings that he held with me. The board has some difficult decisions ahead. I am confident that they will make the best decisions for all concerned. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Supervisor Perea.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, again, we stand here in first thanking you for the fine work that you've done on this segment. The introduction of value engineering into this concept, bringing in the proposals where we'll now be at grade, have vastly improved these proposals. They were good already, they're even better now. And I think the fact that you have had such public outreach in our communities has brought a good proposal before you. As indicated, there's going through a process now. There's going to be a lot of more public comment. Our commitment to you from Fresno Works is that we will engage with our communities from Bakersfield to Merced, bring elected leadership together. We're going to reach out and educate and have our education teams out there. What we ask is if there's any opportunity with Ogilvy, your public relations firm, if there's any opportunity for us to partner with them to bring this type of synergy into ground zero, which is Fresno to, or Merced, I think, to Bakersfield. As much education we can get out there and let folks know what now the new alignments are, and we can get this thing done. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor. That concludes the public. Thank you, sir. That concludes the public portion of the comment. Mr. Van Ark, I apologize. I stepped out of the room. I just want to make sure I understand this. This item, number 7, and item number 6 connect together by the Y connection. I just want to make sure I understand. I thought in item number 6 there was the added Avenue 21 connection across the 152 back to the across to the 152 as an added route connection off the Y. Is that correct?
No, I would like to correct that somewhat. We had Avenue 21 and Avenue 24 in the past, so we retained those two.
Yes.
And what we've done on the San Jose to Merced environmental report is we've added in a further investigation into Highway 152. And what you see on the graph, on the map there, is one alternative which we've shared with the agricultural community. And as was mentioned to you today as well, we are working with the agricultural community on that alignment to see whether we can find another way to connect 152 into the Merced to Fresno alignment. So the one that is added in is referred to as the 152 alignment, which we discussed in the previous
All right, so in the previous presentation, it shows 3, Avenue 21, the 152, and Avenue 24.
Exactly.
However, in this one, it still just shows Avenue 21 and Avenue 24 as those only 2 options. So
correct.
So that third east connection is going to be studied jointly by both teams, or how does that work?
The ownership of that is with the San Jose to Merced team. And that's why it's shown actually on the paperwork of the San Jose to Merced. And you'll just see the cutoffs of the Avenue 21 and Avenue 24. We have to leave those cutoffs that were defined in the documentation before. So the cutoffs of Avenue 21 and 24 remain with the Merced to Fresno group. And the new 152 is being studied by the San Jose Merced team. And they will add that, and they have added one in already, and as was mentioned to you today, they will be talking with the agricultural community as well, or with all the communities, by the way, with everybody, to see whether there are other alternatives of connecting back into the Merced-Fresno alignment.
Okay. So since item 6 came first, we talked about that 152 connection. So on future maps, it will be a dashed line, I assume, on this one, because that shows where it's being studied by others. So I was just confused by that.
Correct.
Very good. Any further board discussion on the staff recommendation? Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Richards, second by Mr. Burns. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. The item passes unanimously. And then item number 8. All right. Mr. Van Ark, would you like to So on this item, Mr. Van Ark is, we'll have a presentation. We'll maintain our meeting here. I need to probably ensure that I maintain a quorum. And Mr. Van Ark was... Okay. I know that Mr. Umberg and Mr. Balgenorth were going to join Mr. Van Ark at this Senate hearing, so we can continue with 5 members present. So with that, please proceed.
I'm back. Board, item number 8 again is an action item. I'm Jeff Abercrombie, the program manager for the Central Valley, Merced to Fresno, Fresno to Bakersfield. And this supplement, the purpose of this agenda item is to summarize the investigation of the proposed changes to the preliminary alternative analysis report for Fresno to Bakersfield, previously approved at your June 3rd, 2010 meeting, and the supplemental and alternative analysis report issued in September of 2010. Again, this is a result of working with local stakeholders as well as our efforts to reduce visual mitigation and value engineering efforts. There is a relatively long list of items to be covered in this, so I won't repeat them here, but again, these alternatives are still subject to the EPA and Army Corps concurrence. And with that, I'd like to introduce the Fresno to Bakersfield project manager, Bob Shevitz. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Jeff. Chairman Pringle, members of the board who remain, good morning, or actually it is precisely noon, so I guess it's now good afternoon. I'll try to make this fairly quick. A little bit of review. The Fresno to Bakersfield section is approximately 113 miles long. We have divided it for study into 6 subsections, which we list here: Fresno down through Kings County, the town of Corcoran, the Ellensworth State Park area, the cities of Wasco and Shafter, and then finally Bakersfield. There are 3 proposed stations in this section, one in downtown Fresno, the proposed Kings Tulare Regional Station east of Hanford, and the station in downtown Bakersfield. I wanted to note that in this section we have full 220-mile-an-hour operating speeds. There is no section, there's no point in this section where the speeds would be less than the maximum standard operating speed of 220. There we go. As Mr. Wenzel said previously, a little bit of history. The program EIR-EIS was adopted in 2005. When we were engaged in 2007, we undertook a study of station locations in the central portion of the corridor near Visalia, Tulare, and Hanford, hence the name VTH Station Study. We began formal scoping under CEQA and NEPA in 2009. We did produce a preliminary alternatives analysis in June of 2010 and followed that with a supplemental in September of 2010. Since then, we've been conducting preliminary engineering and environmental impact studies. In terms of the alternatives that were studied in the 3 subsections, we at that time did not have the 4 sub-breakouts of the rural section. We simply called it rural. So if you wish to go back and compare this with any of the earlier reports, you'll find something called rural rather than these sub-areas. We looked at alternatives that had been defined in the program EIR-EIS, those that came out of the Visalia-Tulare-Hanford study, and also from scoping comments from the public and agencies, both oral comments and those submitted in writing. In general, the alignments follow the BNSF corridor, the lengthiest line stretching all the way from Fresno to Bakersfield, but we also did look at some alignments along the Union Pacific corridor further to the east that would potentially serve a station located closer to Visalia or Tulare. The majority of the project in this area would be at grade. We do have some elevated sections in cities and towns, and some of those elevated sections are the subject of this supplemental AA. We started out with stations in Bakersfield and Fresno, and as part of the alternative study of stations, we looked at 4 options near Visalia, Tulare, and Hanford. Finally, we defined local variations to avoid sensitive resources, and I'll be getting into that in a minute. There were 3 or 4 locations where we have alternatives. Turning first, in the preliminary AA, the results were 3 alignment alternatives. One to the west of the Union Pacific through downtown Fresno, one to the east through downtown Fresno, just on the other side of the Union Pacific tracks, and then finally a hybrid or crossover alternative where we would switch back and forth to avoid sensitive resources. All of them would be elevated adjacent to the Union Pacific. We looked at station sites at Kern Street for the west and the crossover, and for Mariposa Street for the UPRR East. And the prior presentation showed you the general location of those stations in more detail. All of the alternatives that were selected would follow the BNSF down to Bakersfield. The alignments I mentioned that would use the UP for a portion of it were not carried forward after the preliminary. Looking at the rural subsection, we follow the BNSF corridor. It's largely at grade, as I mentioned. It would be located very near to the BNSF right-of-way wherever possible. We included a bypass east of Hanford with the recommended station site there located with the red circle. We started out being elevated through Corcoran, Wasco, and Shafter, and I did just mention the station. We also came up with 3 local options: a Corcoran bypass around the town of Corcoran, a bypass around the Allensworth State Park area, which also included a number of sensitive environmental resources, and finally a bypass around Wasco and Shafter. At this time, the board accepted these recommendations, except they also directed us in June of last year to study an alignment to go directly through the city of Hanford, thereby not having the bypass as it's shown now. In the Bakersfield subsection, in the preliminary alternatives analysis, we had 2 alignments. We had one that would go through the BNSF yard and place the high-speed train station near Amtrak station in the blue circle. We had a second alignment which followed a slightly different path, but had a station just a few hundred feet away to the south of the Amtrak station. Excuse me, both alternatives would be elevated the entire length of the city. Turning to the supplemental AA report, we looked at 2 alignments through Hanford. You see the red being the BNSF alignment. Today, we looked at a downtown station option, and we looked at an option with a station a little bit further south of town. And the reason for these studies was that the current BNSF tracks the curves are very tight. They were never designed for high-speed train service. And so with our high operating speeds, we would have to deviate from their right-of-way significantly through the city of Hanford. There was a number of fairly significant displacement impacts identified. We just couldn't make the thing work without taking out a good bit of the downtown of the city and some residential areas. And so as a result, the board heard this report and decided not to proceed with a through Hanford alignment option, and we then proceeded with our work. So in the preliminary engineering phase, we continued development of alignments. We looked at environmental impact analysis in great detail, and we're, of course, heading up to release of a draft environmental impact report impact statement. We talked extensively to stakeholders. We talked with the railroads, and we also talked with federal and state resource agencies about their concerns about sensitive resources. Finally, we conducted design reviews, the early phases of value engineering, which were mentioned previously, looking for ways to optimize the system, to cut costs, and make it more efficient. The results of this were modifications to existing alternatives, which I'll then detail for you. We added new alignments, new features. We are recommending to remove 2 alignments and some other features. We looked at shifting alignments horizontally, and we looked at changing the profiles from elevated to at grade in several locations. The results of this, we believe, give you across the board reduced impacts, increased benefits both to the authority and to locals, reduced costs in many situations, and overall a more compatible, less impacting, more cost-effective project. I'd like to turn now to the specifics. For the Fresno subsection, we consulted with the city of Fresno extensively about looking at taking one of the alignment options down to grade from being elevated. And in fact, one of our recommended changes is to have an at-grade alignment through downtown Fresno as far as the point at which it would curve up and over the Highway 99, which we'll have to do. This includes a number of new grade separations for both streets and for the existing San Joaquin Valley Railroad, be under the Highway 180 as well at the north end of downtown. We're also proposing to add, at the city's request, a new alternative station site at Mariposa Street. The city believes that that is much more compatible with their long-term plans for station area planning, and so that we have added that. We are proposing to remove the other two elevated alternatives and simply have them, yes, fly away to the northeast, so that we would be left then with a single at-grade option with the grade separations I mentioned through downtown Fresno. The benefits of this would be reduced urban impacts. There would be less noise being closer to the ground. There would be less visual impact. There would be improved traffic because we'll be building grade separations that also include the Union Pacific. So the traffic queues from the freight railroad would disappear as well. The freight railroad would not have to use its horn anymore. This would also add to freight railroad safety. I mentioned the station site, better integration with the city and the downtown, and also reduced life cycle costs. So these are the proposals for Fresno. Turning now to the Hanford-Kings County area, we consulted with all the local agencies, with agricultural interests, and also with the federal and state resource agencies. We're recommending that the alignment be shifted both north and south of the proposed Kings-Tulare station. In the north, it's to reduce the impact on agricultural resources and facilities. We're going to be following more along an existing utility corridor. It also better avoids dairies and other types of agricultural facilities. In the south, the shift is the result of wanting to miss several acres of wetlands, and we've collaborated and coordinated with the U.S. Corps of Engineers and the U.S. EPA on defining alignment that would accomplish that. There are benefits in terms of reduced impacts on agricultural lands and resources, and also avoiding the wetlands that I just mentioned. I'd like to also point out, however, that it's rare that you can have an alignment that doesn't involve some kinds of impacts and costs. Rarely can you have something that only produces benefits. This is true of all the recommendations. In this case, I just wanted to mention that one of the impacts of the proposed alignment is that it would affect a small subdivision known as the Lacey Rural Community just outside of Hanford. And there are about 23 sites, home sites in that area, and probably a good minimum of half of those would be affected by the alignment and would have to be purchased and those homes removed and relocated. So that's just one example. In any of these proposals, there are some impacts, but in balance, we find the benefits overall definitely outweighing the impacts. In the Corcoran subsection, just south of there, we talked to the City of Corcoran and local stakeholders, not least being the J.G. Boswell Company, which has a major employment facility there. Proposing a new alternative that would be at grade through the city on the west side of the Burlington Northern. This would include 4 grade separations and a number of other improvements. We're proposing to move the bypass alternative I mentioned previously to make it closer to the city, thereby cutting down some of the impacts there. The benefits, again, benefits in town with less noise, less visual impact, improved traffic. We've grade separating the BNSF, improved safety, and lower cost. Turning now to the Allensworth area, this is a very rural area. You can see the red line on your screen was the original alignment. We've talked to resource agencies, ag interests, and the Allensworth State Historic Park. And as a result, we defined a new alignment that would reduce impacts on wetlands even further. It was also better suited to some of the agricultural operations and interests in the area. And so in general, we believe it's all in all a much better alignment. Again, the benefits are avoiding impacts on wetlands and agricultural facilities. Turning now to Wasco and Shafter, we talked to the two cities and to local stakeholders. One of the modifications was to tighten one of the curves in the Kimberlina Road area to make it conform more closely to the BNSF alignment, and that has been accomplished. A second was a small section north of Shafter, was previously elevated, has now been brought down to grade with 2 new grade separations. And then on the south of Shafter, a more significant change, taking an alignment that once was on the east side and elevated and moving it to the west side and making it at grade. And that has 2 primary benefits. One, it reduces a conflict with an international trade center on the east side, and 2, it's less costly to construct. 2 other changes in the Wasco Shafter S. We shifted the bypass slightly to avoid a resource that is potentially eligible to be listed as a historic resource, and also a major oil and gas production facility. And then finally, as a result of moving our alignment on the south end from the east side to the west side, we would move the existing proposed heavy maintenance facility site from the east side to the west side. We've had contact with Kern County and Kern COG about that. So again, the benefits in all of these are reduced conflicts. We have better fit with ag facilities, with historic property, with the International Trade and Transportation Center. We'll avoid a cemetery. It's better for Burlington Northern operations. And then finally, I mentioned the oil and gas facility. And we also believe that there's a significant cost savings in doing this. Finally, then, talking about Bakersfield, we consulted with the city, the county, the COG, and the Kern High School District. And in one area, we're proposing to take what was an elevated section and bring it down to grade, which would add more grade separations and therefore better traffic flow across the freight railroad, reduce noise, impact, visual traffic, and also less cost to the project. So what I have now is a summary of all these changes. I'd be happy to read them to you, or if you'd prefer, we can just go ahead.
We heard them all. They're all in our report as well.
Okay, so I'll skip reading them all.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Okay, all right, very good. So I'll just say there are 3 in Fresno, 1 in the Hanford-Kings County area, 2 in Corcoran, 1 in Allensworth area, 5 in the Wasco Shafter area, and 1 in the Bakersfield subsection. I did also want to add that we're proposing to clarify in the preliminary alternatives report, we had mentioned that we would share right-of-way with the BNSF wherever possible. In subsequent discussions and analysis, we'd like to clarify that to mean that we will be adjacent to them wherever possible, but we will not be sharing their actual right-of-way with them. So that's one other change. As far as next steps, we ask that you accept the staff recommendations. And then from here on, we plan to release our draft EIR-EIS at the end of July, have public hearings in August, a final release of the final in the end of December, and then anticipating a ROD-NOD in February of next year. And with that, I'm finished. Thank you.
Very good. Any questions from board members? Yes, Mr.
I just have
Toledo.
one quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this presentation and in the prior one, the alignments that we've been looking at run on BNSF or adjacent to. Tell me, just give us a little color on the relationship that we have with that entity, and we've talked a lot about the cost savings and the efficiencies. That's terrific. Are they sharing in that? Give us some color on what's going on with that as well.
Okay, I certainly could, but I would think perhaps there's someone from the authority that would be better to talk about the business relationship. I can say that we've had a number of meetings with them to discuss alignments. They've been very, very cooperative. I know also there's an MOU between the authority and the BN that is either signed or is being contemplated to be signed to share costs. But I would ask for some assistance from the authority.
I think we'll use your response as a complete response, and then have Mr. Toledo ask that question to Mr. Van Ark at our next meeting. Great. That'd be great. Any other discussions from board members? There's a couple of members of the public that wish to be heard on this item. Thank you very much. Katie Stevens from Mayor Swearingen's office. Diana Peck from the Farm Bureau. Mr. George, and then Mr. Then Frank. I'll figure out the name later. Yes, Katie.
Thank you, Chairman
Ms.
Pringle.
Stevens.
Thank you. I'm with the City of Fresno and Mayor Ashley Swearingen's office, and we just wanted to make sure we express our gratitude to Mr. Van Ark and the High Speed Rail Authority team for all the communication, the directness with us over the last about 6 months or so. We're very pleased with the at-grade option, and we're very pleased with the addition of another station location at Mariposa. That's our preferred station location, and we're pleased that it's been added. There are clearly some, outstanding issues we continue to work through with the authority, but conversations are going extremely well, and we've penned a recent letter to Mr. Van Ark with all of those detailed, and we continue to work with them, and just want to thanks again for the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Peck.
Thank you, Chairman Pringle and members of the board. My name is Diana Peck. I'm the Executive Director of the Kings County Farm Bureau. I have been here before, and I do want to express, just repeat what Mr. Upton had to say about the frustration we are feeling in the agricultural community because of the fact that our recommendations we feel they are not being addressed properly. We are disturbed by a lot of the language in the programmatic environmental documents. There isn't a lot of specifics. We have a lot of vagueness, such as the term that the agricultural land is being affected when it's actually being destroyed, the references to the number of acres being destroyed. When you slice up a piece of agricultural land, a parcel, through the middle, you don't just affect the piece that you take, you affect the entire parcel. And so therefore our belief is that it is not hundreds of acres that are being impacted, but actually thousands that are being impacted. Also, I want to express to you a little bit of a frustration for me. I was recently prohibited from attending a technical working group meeting in Kings County, and because I was not a county or city staff member, I also expressed that I was only there to observe. I understood I was not allowed to participate, just to observe. I believe the status and the updates that were going to be expressed that day were very important to the businesses that I represent, and I just feel that this lack of transparency on the authorities' part is cultivating an environment of distrust. And so I just want to address that. What we're doing in Kings County, it's become apparent to us that our public testimony is providing no impacts to the design and planning of this project, and so therefore our citizens have petitioned our local representatives to represent us in this matter. So I just wanted to share this with you just briefly, if I could. Our representatives take it very seriously, their duty to care for the public health, safety, and welfare of their constituents, and this includes our stable economy, productive industry, and healthy environment. When you destroy agricultural lands, you not only affect the farmers involved, you affect the business supporting, the agricultural supporting businesses, and also the citizens. And so I just want to ask you a brief question. I know I'm out of time, but were you aware of a recent demand by our Kings County government for coordination? Because they asked for the process of coordination and demanded it, and according to your agency coordination document, you established this formal procedure so that the agencies can participate in the environmental review process and not wait for the distribution of the environmental documents, but actually be involved in the preparation of those documents. Your coordination plan states that you promote an efficient, streamlined process as well as good project management through coordination, scheduling, and early resolution of issues. And I just want to say to you that Mr. Abercrombie stated at the first coordination meeting in Kings County, a government-to-government meeting, that the authority does not feel that the provisions cited in the Federal Land Policy Management Act or the ISTEA are directly applicable to this process or this project, nor do you as the authority agree that with our review of the legal basis for on this effort of coordination. I just wanted to question you on that.
Well, I have no idea what you're talking about, and in fact, all you heard throughout the course of today is coordination with various local government entities. You could talk to any of the counties that are your neighbors, and if, in fact, Kings County in this specific regard, and if you're the spokesperson for the elected officials of Kings County, that's great.
No, I'm not. I'm actually a witness to the process.
They should, in fact, send me a note that they don't feel that they are being heard. I would also like to just hear in a specific sense from some elected officials from Kings County.
Okay.
Because if your voice is that representation from Kings County, then I would like to be told that.
Okay, super.
And in fact, it's hard for me to understand the level of contact, involvement, and engagement that we have had throughout this corridor. and then to hear that your assumption is people are taking you or your organization or businesses or local government for granted. That's certainly not the case. Now, you can point to one or two specific examples where you're not happy or where an alignment discussion comes that you're not going to accept, or that some of the businesses that are part of your association. But in none of your remarks did you specifically reference any of the elements before us as to we don't like this because, or we don't like that because.
We have been stating that.
Well,
we have been stating that.
No, ma'am, you never stated it once today, and I was listening to your words because what we're doing at this moment in time is talking about modifying the alternatives. If there's modification you want to speak to and say, don't do this because of that, or consider this alternative because of that, you can claim that there's no public opportunity for you to express yourself, but guess what? You're expressing yourself in public.
I understand that.
So at this moment in time would have been the most appropriate way for you to say, right here, this affects a piece of property we don't like.
Okay.
And it would be nice for this board to hear it. This board is a part-time board that meets once a month. And some of us only spend about 20, 25 hours a week providing additional support at no cost to the state to hear and participate at events. You're more than welcome to come to the Kern County Council of Government event that I'm going to be speaking at, flying to Bakersfield for that single purpose, and then flying home to make sure I can administer the final exam to the class that I teach on Monday nights. But none of us get paid to do this. So your challenge of our staff and to say that, nobody's listening to you, I want to listen to you, but I got to hear you. I got to understand what you're saying. And at this moment in time, I don't.
Okay, well,
so why don't you put it on a piece of paper? Why doesn't?
We have.
No. I'm not going to have a give and take. I heard your point of view. I hope you heard mine. And then maybe you can be very precise and have the members of the Board of Supervisors specifically tell us where they have been denied an opportunity to participate, where they wish to participate, and where this alternative is taking your concerns for granted. So I wish to see that.
Okay, may I just say one more thing then? They have done that in this request to meet with you, but no one from the board nor from senior staff was present, only the regional representation, and they did. And so I will leave this with you. I will leave this packet. So I'm under the assumption that you have not seen this agenda packet, which actually is the letter from the Board of Supervisors to the High Speed Rail Authority, the response from the authority, and the detailed list of conflicts to Kings County's plans.
So leave it with the staff. I'll ask the staff to fully set. I have probably only looked at 2,000-3,000 letters that I've received, and it's wonderful that I might not have read 2,000-3,000 agenda packets. I know I've read letters from various people around the state who've expressed precise issues relating to their farm property, their houses, their businesses, and I think members of this board do, as well as that's the whole premise of having a staff developing alternative analysis and giving you an opportunity to be precise and telling us what your concerns are.
I agree, and I believe that we have done that. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. George, then Mr. Vieira. Yes, sir.
Chairman Pringle and remaining members of the board, thank you. Cahuilla Delta Water Conservation District is a lead local sponsor in a project that is near completion to provide additional storage in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. As part of that, we ended up with a mitigation site of 1,300 acres, and it turns out that this project is a Corps of Engineers project. The state of California is a non-federal sponsor. Cahuilla Delta is the lead local sponsor in partnership with the city of Visalia, Tulare Lake Basin Water Storage District, and the counties of Kings and the county of Tulare. We would like to compliment staff for their recommendation here for this alternative in the area where those wetlands sites are. Our mitigation site is not depicted on the map, but it's in between those two areas that you see as wetlands. So the fact that you are moving that away avoids conflict with the area, I believe, but certainly with our site. And we appreciate the cooperation of staff in working through that issue. I would work with the staff to show the what I'll say is the insertion of that on the maps in the future so that can be designated, and you'll see that. But it does not alter the conclusion. It misses everything there. Appreciate your time.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see exactly where you're talking about, just north of Nevada Avenue, correct? Wow. Wonderful. Thank you, sir. And then Frank, following Mr. Oliveira. I don't know if that's an R or an L.
Didn't have my glasses on when I was saying
Okay. And then Mr. Olmos. Yes, sir.
Well, my name is Franklin Oliveira.
Got it.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Pringle, and other members of the board for allowing me an opportunity to address you. I'm representing my family, Gaspar's Dairy, and Gaspar's Dairy. We live in Kings County, and our family's been farming and dairying there since the mid-1880s. In 2008, Proposition 1A promised the state would build a high-speed rail along existing transportation corridors that could move California's population effectively and rapidly from the state's vast metropolitan cities and centers in the north and the south. Proposition 1A promised to do all of that while improving the environment. The high-speed rail would be inspiring, benefit all who lived in California and everybody who visited this state. It's a very good thing. In 2008, the voters approved Proposition 1A, and as I understand it, a $9 billion bond was established, and a mandate to build it became a reality. Did you know that in Kings County, Proposition 1A failed? The proposition was easily defeated. You could draw two conclusions off that simple fact. One, the voters in in Kings County, are anti-progress, and they oppose change that would be for the greater good of all. Or, the voters of the county saw no benefit to them and more harm than benefit to them being caused by this project. Please remember that point. We own 4 farms in your proposed alignment, and we are speaking for one additional dairy in your proposed alignment. Those businesses and homes were established over a century ago. We understand the High-Speed Rail Authority has the legal authority and intention to destroy our businesses and our homes. During the course of this project, you intend to do the same to several thousand landowners like us, and we understand that too. It's my understanding that Kings County has taken the position that they support the creation of the high-speed rail being built as long as it's built along an existing transportation corridor. They oppose the rail being built across the most expensive and highest producing farmland in the county along a route that is crowded with dairies, contrary to the report that you just received. And those dairies and those farms are complying with the county's general plan, and state and federal regulations. The farms and dairies have always been at those locations long before the rail became an issue. Since Federal Rail Authority money is used in this project, it appears that federal regulations and the preparation of an EIS should be followed. We have never been contacted, despite all the banter that's just happened in here. We've never been contacted by the High-Speed Rail Authority and advised by the authority that they're about to condemn our lands or our businesses. We only know what we know by pursuing the authority. We have, in good faith, advised the authority of potential problems in their planning as we have discovered them. We have not created any problems for the authority. We have just advised the authority about the problems that they are about to encounter by traveling off course through prime farmland.
And, sir, are you near the end of your written statements?
Pretty close.
All right. So your 2 minutes is up about a minute ago. So if you wish to conclude, that would be great.
Well, I can sum all this up pretty quick.
Thank you.
You're about to drive over a plant called Baker Commodity. Baker Commodity processes dead animals, large dead animals, for the entire south end of the valley. They process about 200 dead cows a day, 500 calves, 700 animals, day in, day out. That's about 200,000 dead carcasses a year. Your track is driving right over that. That will affect about 400 dairies, not the dairies that are directly in the route. dairies all over, because that is the only processing rendering plant in that end of the valley. Your staff did not know about this fact until mid-April. They knew the plant was there. They had no idea what it is. And that's the point that I'm trying to explain here. Specific issues. These reports that I see, that I've sat here for months listening to, don't talk about the things on the ground. They do in lofty terms, but they don't actually address 200,000 dead cows in your way. It doesn't discuss destroying an industry, a dairy industry, that there is no place to dispose these animals in the valley other than this location. They cannot take this plant offline and then rebuild it somewhere else and get it permitted. The dairies that they're going to hit, if they affect wastewater facilities, which they are affecting at about 200 properties, okay, those dairies will have to either go out of business because they will not be able to re-permit in the permitting times to meet regulations to stay in business. I have no idea why your staff, the authorities staff, is unaware of these facts, and I haven't heard any of this today.
Very good. And what the manager in this section heard your comments. He'll take your name down, and they'll follow up with you as well.
Mr. Pringle.
Yes, sir.
He threw me out of a public meeting, okay, about a week and a half ago.
Well, and I'm not going to do that, even though, you know, we want to hear your point of view.
As of 30 minutes ago, sir.
Yes.
Okay, I was invited by email to attend a public meeting in the neighborhood. I'm a stakeholder. I'm not the guy walking out there. You folks are driving over our property, and people like us. We're stakeholders.
Okay.
Okay, and your staff threw us out of a meeting. Furthermore, I contacted the board, the CEA.
Okay,
CEO.
so this is your last statement, sir. I want to hear it. Yes,
absolutely. Please. I contacted Mr. Van Ark about this by email and telephone. And I'm still waiting for a response about being removed from a public meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments, sir.
Any feedback?
Yes. I tried to make some of it, but I'm not going to debate with you during your presentation, your comments, which we heard. Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Almos.
Thank you.
Chair Pringle and members of the board, I'm Mike Almos. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Visalia. You've seen me here for a long time. I come to all the meetings, and I've had a lot of presence with in this room and others on meetings that you've had, not just here but throughout the state. So I have a long history with the process. I represent not just Visalia. I also keep the cities in Tulare County informed of the high-speed rail project. To put in perspective, the Tulare County is the number 2 agricultural county in the nation. Fresno County is the number 1 agricultural county in the nation. Both counties support the high-speed rail process. We had hoped that the line would be near us and a station near us. Didn't wind up that way. Wound up in the Hanford area. But if you look at the maps that you've seen, you have Hanford, Visalia, Tulare. That cluster of cities represents a population of about 250,000 people that will be served by the Tulare King Station. It's a very important thing for our region. We have continually supported it, and I wanted to make that known. Your staff has been very good to work with. Despite what you hear, what you've heard from some folks today, there have been numerous public meetings. I have followed and been to most, if not all of them. They started in Visalia when you were looking at all alternatives. When the alternative moved over to Kings County, the meetings shifted over to Kings County. There have been lots of meetings. Many people have been notified. Those that chose to come and become informed and get involved in the process did so. We chose to do that, and that's why you've seen us engage in that process. So despite what you've heard, there has been a lot of outreach by your staff, and many people have been heard there in the region. That said, we support the project. Visalia continues to support it. The cities in Tulare County that we've been in contact with continue to support it. We think that your staff has done a very good job in trying to work through the issues, and we hope that the project moves forward as recommended. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have additional staff recommendations for the modification of the alternatives analysis as was presented. Any member of the board have any additional questions? Seeing none, is there a motion on those? Motion by Mr. Burns, second by Mr. Richards. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect in attendance are Mr. Richards, Mr. Burns, Mr. Polito, and Mr. Hartnett, and myself. And by unanimous vote, the motion passes. We have two other items on our agenda. One is Executive Officer's Report. I don't necessarily want it. So if it's all right, and if our deputy directors have no addition on that, then we will continue that item to our next meeting, and also report from members. Any additional comments from board members? Yes, sir.
We know there's attendance at the budget hearing today with Mr. Simidian.
Yes.
Will that be something that we would expect the executive, the CEO's part of his report next month, just to give us a status of what's going on? Or?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll hear that report either from our staff in the paper or at the next board meeting.
Yeah. I just thought in terms of some formal comments that we might get, so that we...
Well, I do think, Mr. Hartnett, that's a very good point. And would you, Ms. Porvahidi, just ensure that there is some transmittal to the board and made available in some public context as to a report of what occurred today? Thank you very much. If there's no other business to come before this May meeting, the California High-Speed Rail Authority, we stand adjourned.
Railroad, and I'm here to help.
Authority Board meeting to order. First, I'd like you all to stand and ask Vice Chairman Umberg to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty